All right. Madam Clerk, can we call our regular meeting to order?
Yes, thank you. Mayor Robert Parkhurst,
Still present.
Mayor Pro Tem Christine Lowe,
Present.
and still, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Garcia is still excused from this evening's meeting. Councilmember Gingas.
Here.
Councilmember Kelly Krebs.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, you have quorum.
Great. Councilmember Gus, would you please lead us in Pledge of Allegiance and Inspiration?
I would be happy to. Please rise if you're able and face the flag. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's it. So it's summertime and a lot of things are on our minds, but every summer I think a lot of people think about the beach. I certainly do. Had an opportunity to do a quick beach day vacation down in Long Beach a week ago, and that was nice. And my family's lucky enough to go to Hawaii this summer for a week, so it's going to be a beachy summer for us. Anyway, I thought that would be the theme if we're talking about inspiration and it's summertime. So I looked up some famous quotes on the beach and the ocean that I thought I'd share with you tonight. And not many, just I'll try to keep it as short as possible. First from Lord Byron. Roll on, deep and dark blue ocean, roll. 10,000 fleets sweep over thee in vain. Man marks the earth with ruin, but his control stops with the shore. Jacques Cousteau, I don't know if anybody remembers him. The sea, once it casts its spell, holds one in its net of wonder forever. Mother Teresa, we ourselves feel that what we are doing is just a drop in the ocean, but the ocean would be less because of that missing drop. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, my soul is full of longing for the secret of the sea. And Sir Isaac Newton, to myself I am only a child playing on the beach, while vast oceans of truth lie undiscovered before me. By Rainer Maria Rilke, when anxious, uneasy, and bad thoughts come, I go to the sea, and the sea drowns them out with its great wide sounds, cleanses me with its noise, and imposes a rhythm upon everything in me that is bewildered and confused. And from Mr. Isaac Dynison, the cure for anything is salt water, sweat, tears, or the sea. And on that note, Mr. Mayor, I yield the floor back to you.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. All right. Now we're on the next item on the agenda is the approval of meeting agenda. Approval of the meeting agenda. Do we have any modifications to the agenda tonight? All right. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We had a closed session earlier tonight. Madam City Attorney, would you please give us a report out of the closed session?
City Council met in closed session and discussed potential options in response to bear incidents. However, no reportable action has been taken at this time.
Thank you so much. All right. Then the next item is approval of meeting minutes from June 24th, 2025. Madam City Clerk, did you receive any changes on the minutes?
Mr. Mayor, the City Clerk's office did not receive any suggestions or edits for the minutes.
Any from the dais here tonight?
I move to approve the minutes from the June 24th meeting.
Great.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Now we'll do entertain a motion, or entertain a motion for reading resolutions and ordinances by title only.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Mayor and City Council reports. Who would like to go first?
I don't mind going first. So on 6/25, I attended the Safe and Active Streets Working Group through SCAG,
And one take away from that was that there's a fantastic helmet distribution program where you can have them attend events and they have a free helmet distribution. So I sent that to our community services that maybe we'll have them during our community bike ride. Come and do that. And there's also a great community streets grant that can help do a lot of education and marketing on how to be safe in our cities, walking and biking and driving. On 6/26, Mayor Parkhurst, Councilmember Goss, and I went to the San Diego Valley COGS reception and installation of their new board. It was a great event down in Monrovia. And on 7/3, of course, most all of us I saw attended the fantastic park events. I served in the beer garden for 2 hours or so, and then we took the gigantic Sierra Madre community photo, which I have not done since I think the 88 might have been the last year we took one. And that was pretty fantastic to have everybody. And it's much easier with a drone now than with a tall ladder with a big camera. And then the parade was fantastic. It was not too warm, so it was a great day. And then on Monday, yesterday, I attended the governor's press conference. Yesterday, 7/7 marked the 6-month anniversary of the Eden and Palisades fires. And since that time, 96% of all properties have now been cleared of debris, which is fantastic. There was a great basically presentation of everything that has happened and how this is the fastest response to a wildfire out of any of the wildfires we've had yet in the United States. There's still a lot of work to do, of course, and moving forward, the plans that were laid out. LA County has been working very closely with the state and all entities, all the way from the governor to our senators, to Congress, and to our assembly, and our local governments also. And so it's been a great collaboration. Everyone's on the same page moving forward, which is I think why the speed is so great and why the messaging is great and work is actually happening. So LA County has a new plan. It's called LA County Forward. It's a blueprint for rebuilding. And there's basically 6 pillars that'll be happening here in our county. One is supporting financial path to return, creating the ability for people to lower the costs in order to rebuild. Also accessing financial support where needed. Scale plan checks and inspections, and we've looked at a lot of ways to streamline planning and also streamline the process for residents. Supporting the scale of building. It's also including looking at our workforce and what we're going to need in the next 5 years as we rebuild. Infrastructure, critical infrastructure in places. We've talked about this in terms of our water and our wells and what we need as a city to move forward. And so there has been legislation to support that as well as funding. And so it's now up to us to really reach out to those grants and find support in our state for how we can increase our water wells and our infrastructure, not just for fires, but for earthquakes as well. Mobilizing and workforce coordinating delivery. So as you've seen, tons and tons of trucks going through all of LA County as well as our city. This is the fastest cleaning job we've ever seen. If you look at Maui, they're 3 years in, and they have still some sites that are being cleaned and some areas that are being cleaned, and we are very close to being fully done. Bringing back everyday services, and here's the most important part. How do we bring back community? How do we bring back what we lost in Altadena and Pasadena, the business owners that are part of a community and family? How do we bring that all back? Now, our parks are getting better. We've brought back parks in Altadena, but even in Sierra Madre, how do we support our neighbors and create a sense of community like we did? And especially during a hard time right now when a lot of community is being separated, how do we adapt to repairing our social services and our ability to be human? And so the key end of this meeting was about helping neighbors, being supportive of neighbors. There's no political party for disasters. There shouldn't be. And so how do we move forward and support each other and collaborate all together? And so that was my takeaway.
Thank you very much, and thank you for attending that event for
You're
me.
welcome.
There are slides associated with that, right?
Yes, I think they recorded the video, and I can get the link to the city.
Yeah, I'd like to see include those in the minutes if we could, so that people have access to them. Either of you, who would like to go next?
I don't have much to add because obviously the focus of this last week was the 4th of July festivities, and Mayor Pro Tem gave a nice shout out. I'll just say that the Sierra Madre Events Committee, as expected, because they do it every year, but it takes a lot, I'm sure, and the fact that it's so seamless tells you how good a job they're doing. But just as always, just knocked it out of the park. It's really become quite a multi-day, multi-generational, multi-everything, throughout town. It really just creates such a great, to Mayor Pro Tem's point about recreating community. I mean, there's nothing better than bringing people together for a tradition, and many people said it, including our assemblyman. Nobody does 4th of July better than Sierra Madre. So I think that should be our new slogan for the events committee.
By the way, including that, I realized we were talking with Congresswoman Judy Chu, and this was her 17th year in the Sierra Madre Parade.
Wow.
Okay. I did enjoy going to the Council of Governments President's reception on the 26th with my colleagues, just because I really enjoyed the outgoing President Tim Hepburn, just a wonderful guy, presided over a lot of accomplishments for the COG while he was president, so it was nice to be able to honor him and see lots of people that we knew there. Yeah, 4th of July, what can you say about it? Didn't work behind the bar as council member, but I did my share on the other side at the beer garden, and I enjoyed the music and the family atmosphere, and it's just amazing. That's all I can say. Thank you to everybody involved, the events committee, all our staff, everybody who's involved in that. That's an over-the-top experience. And then the parade was wonderful. I thought we had a lot of people, and the spirit was just amazing. I saw that Chief got a picture of in the New York Times in his little wheeling around on the side, fire chief, so that was really cool. And then just today at 3 o'clock, I went on a tour with a lot of other folks here in the city of our new library, and to see the progress on its construction, and it is remarkable. They are really making headway over there. They've got a lot of the building up, and we got to tour the whole thing, and it was just very exciting to see this kind of dream that many of us had for a long time actually come to reality. So we still got a ways to go, but it was very heartening and very hopeful to see the progress that's been made.
I neglected to say I also went on that tour, and I want to say that my husband actually created his own personal tour last week, and having walked behind the library on the south side, just walking our dog, and came back and reported how much progress had been made. So I want to say to the public that just walking by on the south side, you can look through the fence and you can see how the build out and how much more space has been added to the library, because you can physically see the steel and the concrete pad that's been laid for that extra space. And so I think it's a nice visual of the plans that we've been talking about for so long. So I encourage folks to do that if they have the ability to do so.
Yeah, I hadn't realized how big the children's room is going to be, the teens room is going to be. There's going to be dedicated space for Friends of the Library, for their book sales. There's going to be a massive public meeting room that we don't have presently. All kinds of amenities built into this thing. A drinking fountain with filtered water that they said would be little stuff too. Just very, very exciting. So anyway.
Thank you. All right, so June 25th, there was an Energy Committee meeting. No reportable action from that one. Also on June 25th, I attended the Sanitation District. That's where I've been reaching out to many of the mayors for the BEAR workshop. As was previously mentioned, the the Silicon Valley, the COG. Thank you, San Gabriel Valley. Thank you. I have it wrong in my notes, so I can't get it out. But I'll echo what Councilmember Goss said. The outgoing president, Tim Hepburn, is just really stepped up that organization and accomplished so much. And so my thanks goes out to him for everything. He's probably the friendliest guy you'll ever meet. He'll always come up and say hello to you. So that was fabulous. As was also previously mentioned, was active in the July 3rd festivities, so that was great. And then the parade. I'll go a little bit further with the chief. Yes, he got his picture in the New York Times, but he was also able to get a lot of fire equipment from LA County. There was giant blade, is what they call it. It was a wide load that actually had to have extra fluorescent painting on the edges of the blade because it was beyond the wideness of the wide load. I mean, this thing was huge. Had a helicopter fly over. We had, as was mentioned, Representative Chu, Supervisor Barger, Assemblymember Harabedian, Senator Perez. In all my years in the city, I don't remember.
Arcadia City Council.
The Arcadia City Council. The Monrovia mayor was also in it. I mean, we were the place to be on July 4th.
Sure.
And this was probably one of the largest parades we had. So all of the county responders that we had, thank you to Chief for making that call, for getting that helicopter flyover. Unbelievable. To me, it was the best parade I've ever been in. So thank you.
We'd like to thank Assistant Chief for LA County Fire, John O'Brien, for all of that.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. And then as Councilmember Goss mentioned, the library tour. I was there with many of the library staff, and man, should you have seen the excitement on their faces of all of the stuff that's in there, and the many of the boards of trustees. This library is just going to be unbelievable. So many neat nooks and crannies we got to see. So much progress on it. I do want to thank the whole team, Director Yanez for leading it. Librarian Regan for helping with the design and with all of the input on it, all of the folks with AMG and all the construction organization. They're doing a really good job of moving that forward. I can't wait to see it, and I can't wait to see kind of the next phase of it. So thank you so much. All right, then we'll move from there to our announcements. It is summer, as we've all talked about, and so we've got summer concerts in the park. July 13th, you can see Bigfoot, a classic 70s rock and roll band. July 20th, the Skinny Ties, an 80s rock and roll group. July 27th, Main Street Groovers, another 80s rock, pop, and new wave group. Elvis will be here August 3rd. And then on August 10th, there will be a Mount Wilson Trail fundraising concert. The details are still to be determined. They will all be from 6 to 8 p.m. Right at the bandshell in Memorial Park. Also in Memorial Park, we will have continue our summer movies. Friday, July 18th, so next Friday, will be The Wild Robot. Friday, August 1st, will be Inside Out 2. All movies will start at dusk. We are still accepting applications for the Senior Commission. Currently, we have 2 vacancies, and we have three applications. So I really encourage people to apply. As the Senior Commission says, they are the funnest commission that's out there. They actually have they're really active and a great group of people. So if you're interested in getting more involved in the city, it is a fabulous place to get involved. I had mentioned, yes?
You don't need to be a senior to be on the Senior Commission.
This is true.
I think that's a widely held, misheld view.
Yep. And then we've got the wildlife workshop that I'm holding on August 8th at the Hart Park House. And that concludes the city announcements. So now we've got the Public Participation Code of Conduct. It's on the back of the yellow cards out there. And we'll move straight from that into public comment. Madam City Clerk, do we have any comments for items that are not on the agenda?
No, sir, we did not receive any speaker cards, nor did we receive any emails in the city clerk's office.
All right. Then we will close public comment, and then we'll go on to our presentation tonight. So if I could get the community services team to come on up. Exactly. All right. So, July is Parks and Recreation Month. So we've got a proclamation for this. So, whereas Parks and Recreation is an integral part of communities throughout this county, including the city of Sierra Madre. Parks and Recreation support health and wellness, improving the physical and mental health of people who live near parks and recognize the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources. And whereas Parks and Recreation promotes time spent in nature, which positively impacts mental health by increasing cognitive performance and well-being and alleviating illnesses such as depression, attention deficit disorders, and Alzheimer's. And whereas Parks and Recreation encourages physical activities by providing space for popular sports, hiking trails, swimming pools, and many other activities designed to promote active lifestyles. And whereas Parks and Recreation is a leading provider of healthy meals, nutrition services, senior programming, and whole family activities such as out-of-school time, youth sports, and environmental education, which are critical to development. And whereas Parks and Recreation increases a community's economic prosperity through increased property taxes, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the city of Sierra Madre does hereby proclaim July as Parks and Recreation Month in the city of Sierra Madre, presented this 8th day of July 2025 by the city by the City Council of the City of Sierra Madre, Mayor Robert Parkhurst, Mayor Pro Tem Christine Lowe, Council members Edward Garcia, Jean Goss, and Kelly Krebs. Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Appreciate everything you do. All right, we need to get the requisite pictures. City's logo. All right, let's go over here. Got it. Got it. All right. Yeah. All right.
Look at the logo. I see how it is. You have the logo.
You had the option.
My mistake.
Thank you so much. Brandon, thank you so much. Here, you guys. All right. On to the consent items. Madam City Clerk, will you please read the consent items by title only?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City Council has 5 items for consideration this evening. The first of the 5 is consent item A, and it's consideration of Resolution 25-43, approving certain demands. It is staff's recommendation that the City Council approve Resolution 25-43. The second item on the consent calendar is consent item B. It's consideration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions, CC&Rs, for Highland Gardens Homeowners Association Condominium Project, parcel map 83897. This is for the address 182 West Highland Avenue. It is recommended that the City Council approve the associated resolution number 25-44. Consent item C is facilitating recovery after the Eaton fire. It's a survey of historic properties. It is recommended that the City Council accept the services offered by the coordinated efforts of the United States Department of Interior, working with the National Park Service and the City of Sierra Madre. Consent item D is the approval of the fiscal year 2025-2026 Statement of Investment Policy. It is staff's recommendation that the City Council adopt Resolution 25-45, approving the Statement of Investment Policy. And lastly, consent item E is a consideration of a use agreement between the Los Angeles County Flood Control District and the City of Sierra Madre regarding Bailey Canyon Wilderness Park. It is staff's recommendation that the City Council approve a use agreement between Los Angeles County Flood Control District and the City of Sierra Madre for use of Bailey Canyon Wilderness Park. Mr. Mayor, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. All right. Does anyone have any questions on consent item A?
I do.
Yes.
For postage for postcards for paramedic subscriptions, do we have an update on when the paramedic subscription would be online? I know we launched the new prices and the new plan, but it seems like there's no way for people to sign up. And then my second part of that question is, when we do get to that point of being online for our other services, is there any way to save on postage instead by notifying via email or via cell phone numbers, like otherwise, because that's a $1,214 expense, and I heard that postage is increasing again, so.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'll have Chief Bartlett come up and give us an update.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council, thank you for that question. We currently do not have an online portion for payments for the paramedic subscription program. We have initiated, hopefully, some talks with IT to see if we can work that out, especially with the upcoming revision of the website. I'd like to be able to see that come to fruition so we can offer that. It's just going to be easier for everybody to do that, but there's a lot of behind the scenes efforts that would have to go into that versus just putting it up there.
So how do people sign up now?
Right now, it is old school, very old school, where people bring in a piece of paper that they've cut off the bottom of it with a check, or in some cases, a credit card. So we have to go through the cashiers here at City Hall to get everything done. I'd like to see us get up to the new millennium and try and get that. I think it'd just be a lot more beneficial, and we'll probably get a lot more enrollments.
So a person who works during normal business hours, are we open on Saturdays?
We are not open on Saturdays, that is correct.
Thank you.
So it has made it challenging, but we're looking at, along with the new programs, we are looking at a more efficient and effective way of getting people enrolled. So we will follow up with that as soon as possible. And to your second question, the mailings, unless we can find a different way with everything that we've done from the fire department, through emails, through social media and everything else, and through our town halls especially, we have found that the best way to get most people is going to be through a mailing. It is so far maybe an evil expense that we have to get out, but there just is no other way to capture everybody. We know that the mail will get there, and hopefully they're reading it. We try to make it attractive so they can actually glance at it and look at it. But we're just trying to every aspect that we can to get people involved. It's the paramedic subscription program is too big and valuable to our community to not advertise it. The benefits far outweigh for me the cost that we accrue.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on item A? I have a question. We've got $24,000 from Townsend Public Affairs. What is that expense for?
Townsend, Mr. Mayor, Townsend we use for our grant writing, our search for grants, and we've been in contact with them. They've been providing some grants that we could possibly sign up for. I know that the police department currently has one earmarked, but
How much have we spent with them in the last fiscal year?
72,000 thus far.
And how much revenue have they brought in?
At this point, currently we have not received any revenue or grants from them since we've signed up with them.
Yes, please.
But you mentioned the potential grant from Congressman Chu's office. I think that's what you were referencing. I know they
Yes,
helped.
that is correct.
They helped source that grant. I know it just hasn't been appropriated yet. Correct.
It's not been appropriated yet, and we're still getting some updates from Judy Chu's office.
And when is the appropriation cycle for that? Do you know?
I don't have that information, Chief Barrientos. I think he
disappeared.
disappeared.
Okay.
He would have that updated information.
Okay. All right. So we'll move on to consent item B. Any comments on or any questions on consent item B? Yes.
I'm unfamiliar with why we would have to approve the CCNRs. I know they have to be submitted with the track map, but why would the Planning Commission and the City Council have to approve an HOA's CCNRs? I know Planning Commission had the same question, so I'm reiterating this.
I will have, Mayor Pro Tem, I'll have Director Lynn come up and respond to that question.
Good evening, mayors and council. Thank you for the question. So we are fulfilling the requirement on from our Sierra Madre Municipal Code, Section 16, this is a procedural process before tract map or parcel map or a residential development is submitted for their final map. Before that, they have to submit CCNR for the Planning Commission and or City Council to approve. And it was recommended by our City Attorney's Office that both the Planning Commission and the City Council receive this.
Is that normal for other cities? I've never heard of Pasadena's just being part of a property management company. I've never seen a city council approve any of our CCNRs for any condo complex that we've managed.
It has been in our code for quite some time. The last one that we reviewed was the 407 Mariposa condominium, the 7-unit condominium, which was back in 2013. So we haven't seen a CCNR for quite some time.
Right.
Could I ask then, maybe for future research too, are we the only city that does this, do you know?
I don't
That
know.
that have Planning Commission and City Councils approve CCNRs for HOAs?
Yeah, for that we'll have to research.
And then how much man hours did this cost you to go all the way through researching, preparing this, going through Planning Commission, and then bringing it to council?
I don't think we prepared it.
Well, they had to prepare a report to give to Planning Commission. Planning Commission then had to bring it on their agenda. They had to approve it, then they sent it to us. So those man hours. Thank you.
And I'll just point out that hypothetically, the Planning Commission could recommend denial and the City Council could still approve, so I think that might be part of the.
The whole process, period.
Right.
Like, I've never seen CCNRs brought to councils before, and I've never watched a meeting where, I guess since 2014?
13.
13? Okay. Thank you.
All right, any questions on item C? Item D.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So I did notice in the policy that there was a new section or an updated section with respect to conflicts and ethics, which I was really happy to see that our city manager and our finance director have certain disclosure obligations to make sure that they are not personally benefiting from our investment decisions, which is a good hygiene and no suggestion that they are. But I did notice that our city treasurer was not listed as one of the mandated reporters, and I suspect that has to do with our elected city treasurer and that the FPPC may not apply. But I'm just wondering maybe that for future consideration in our policy that maybe we ask our city treasurer to make a similar information declaration, at least to the city, even if it's not required under the state FPPC regulations. So,
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Yes, please.
In the city clerk's office, there are two categories of filers. There's category 1 and category 2. The category 2 are mandatory state filers. The category 1 filers are the local municipal filers. The elected city treasurer and all the elected officials and planning commissioners are part of category 2, which are the state mandated filers. And so our city treasurers are currently and have always reported submitted their Form 700 Conflict of Interest Code filings directly to the Fair Political Practices Commission at the state level.
right, maybe we just need to update the policy to reflect that, because it did seem like a pretty glaring omission to me, given that how much our treasurer, directs and has discretion over the policy.
Certainly, I can review that with the city's finance director, and then we can make those changes to incorporate the actual.
Thank you.
Great. Item E.
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
So I understand that this is a long overdue use agreement that we've been sort of existing with the county with respect to Bailey Canyon for a long time without a formal agreement. So I think it's great that we're entering into this. I just had some concerns, I think primarily about the obligation that the city is undertaking with respect to the improvements. There was a list of, fairly innocuous improvements, in terms of the bathroom, the parking lot, very sort of the kinds of things that we would, I think, do typically. But then it was just sort of left open-ended, and other things to be continued, to be determined, which, fine. Except there was a requirement later on in the contract that all of those improvements, as captured by that description, be completed within 5 years. And so I'm a little concerned about, given our fiscal situation and, given the sort of, it sounds like a little bit of an open-ended obligation to complete these improvements within 5 years. I just wanted to make sure that city staff and the city attorney is comfortable that we will be able to comply with our obligation to, complete these improvements in that time frame, because I would hate to be, in breach of our contract.
Can I add to that then also? What about the landscape maintenance also? So the landscape maintenance, could you, whoever prepared this part of it, could you go over the scope of that landscape maintenance that we would then now be responsible for?
Mayor Pro Tem will have analyst James Carlson.
Thank you very much. I was anticipating some questions on this, and our city attorney, Garagosian, worked very closely with me, with him not being here, and our deputy city attorney, Homa Chavera. I indicated that I would try to help out with some of the background.
Thank you.
The first question regarding projects or things, and you are correct. When we started this about 7 months ago, after realizing we were probably operating on a handshake, we were looking specifically at the parking lot needing to be resurfaced and possibly some improvements in the bathroom. For perspective, to resurface that parking lot as well as restriping it, we're looking at about $50,000 to $60,000. I imagine that would come out of our regular street project budgeting process, and that's about $1 million per year over each year for the next 5 years. City Attorney Garagosian and I thought that was a reasonable part of the agreement. Currently, the bathroom, while not being pristine, does not really need a repair within the next 5 years. It could happen, we don't know. If those are the only 2 repairs, we really felt comfortable with it. If there are any additional items that come through, that would really come through us, because we would be in a position, having this agreement, that we could go out and try to find funding, say, for new fencing or new irrigation. And we would go through the whole bidding process with funding that we have found. So that would actually be a bit of a bonus for us that this agreement will allow us to do.
Quick question about that.
Yeah.
This is for 5-year plan. How long is this contract agreement?
25 years?
So what else would that include besides the bathroom and the parking lot?
It really would be anything that the community or the city staff can determine is needed and find funding for from an outside source.
Does that include the bridge?
I'm glad that you asked about the bridge. To prepare, and if it pleases the council, I do have Google Earth set up to really show you the boundaries, and so that there's no confusion with Exhibit A as well. So if that works for you, I can bring that up and show you where the bridge fits in on this.
Please do.
While you're doing that, would we be responsible for the Bailey debris basin and the Sierra Madre tract, or just the Sierra Madre tract?
It's just if you read the parameters, the improvements, quote unquote, are with respect to the project, which is just the Sierra
I don't
Madre
mean that
portion.
the just improves. You're right. I should specify. With the whole agreement, is it encompassing for maintenance and everything else? Is it only the Sierra Madre tract, or is it also the debris basin?
Yeah, it's just the project, which is.
That is a very important question too that I really wanted to take some and make clear. So if you look on the screen here, you will see Bailey Canyon Wilderness Park. Wilderness Park was dedicated in 1967 The trails were created 2 years after that. The Sierra Madre Environmental Action Council was created 2 years after that. Our initial thought was, we just want to make an agreement for the Wilderness Park. It currently has a fence around it. That is our intention the whole way. You will see in Exhibit A, and this is part of the reason why it took us 7 months, is that Exhibit A includes the access road for the maintenance of the debris basin. It's very important to note that the county road, while in Exhibit A, will not be maintained by the city of Sierra Madre as far as the road itself. We had to agree to take care of trash intermittently and maybe clear a little bit of landscape, but it took us a considerable amount of time, even before the fire, before we would agree to anything that included maintenance of this road. You ask about the bridge, and what we're looking at here is actually post-fire and post-fire debris Bailey Canyon. The city of Sierra Madre starts approximately right here, and that is reflected in Exhibit A. If you were to be there, you would notice that the asphalt ends approximately here and the dirt path starts here. The bridge in question was right about here. And to take the bridge, you would get to the Oak Grove Park, which is fortunately still in relatively good shape. And it is kind of a loop with a lot of signs that Sierra Madre Environmental Action Council has maintained and kept going. Continuing north on the trail, this is actually called the Canyon View Trail. Most people will call it the Trail to the Waterfall. We took FEMA out about a month ago, and it is an entirely different canyon. This was one of the first washouts right here. We actually were quite brave, and I kind of look back and think maybe we should have gone further, but we went out, back up, and this washout right here is absolutely devastating. It is 6 to 9 feet deep, 25 feet wide, up to 40 feet wide. We could not even get to the waterfall. We could not get to the Jones Peak Trail. And here's a picture real quick, not that one, of where we stopped the FEMA team. We would not go any further. So that gives you a little perspective of what we have facing us.
How far past the bridge is that, roughly?
I'd say about 500 or 600 feet. About 150 feet before the Jones Peak Trail turnoff.
Oh my God.
How far before the Jones Peak?
About 150 feet.
Okay.
So Sierra Madre is responsible only to where above the debris basin, basically like Exhibit A that you spoke of?
That's correct.
So
We are not responsible for the debris basin whatsoever. We would never, consider taking that on. We are responsible just for the Wilderness Park in the fence and intermittent trash and shrub clearance along the access road.
And so that ends before we get into the what Sierra Madre owns as a part of.
But we don't own, right? It's
The
just
trail.
land.
No, we do own the trail, right where I tried to show you. It's harder to see now that most of it's washed off, but it's approximately right here. Here's the debris basin, so it's the very northern part of the debris basin, essentially where the asphalt ends, the county road asphalt ends, and the dirt trail begins, and that's about 250 feet south of where the bridge used to be.
I'm sorry, I was told that this was LA County Park land in the city of Sierra Madre. Similar like Arcadia has a county park in Arcadia. Do we actually own that land?
No, they're two separate. There's a distinction here. Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, it is Sierra Madre property. It's a Sierra Madre parcel. It's a Sierra Madre, it's part of the Sierra Madre Wilderness parcel. There was a lot of work done by
Can you clarify which parcel you're talking about? Maybe go back to.
once the
Can you go to
trail
your Exhibit A?
starts. Once the trail starts.
Go to your Exhibit A if you can.
I don't have that primed.
Okay.
Yeah. But if you were to look here, it kind of demonstrates the park only, and then they highlight some of the road. I'm trying to demonstrate where that road ends and the Sierra Madre Trail begins.
So where does the county own? Can
Yes.
you draw, can you take your cursor and show what the county owns?
And go back to,
Yes,
like, maybe
yes.
spread out so I can see the whole,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, the county owns the park here.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
Yeah, the county owns
Thank
the
you.
debris basin here,
Trail.
Yes.
and it owns to approximately just above the debris basin, and that's approximately where our trail starts. So they own a little bit to the east of where our actual trail starts right here.
So we would take on the cost of maintenance, infrastructure, liability for this county area, correct?
For the park area.
Do we have a cost on all of that?
Yes, it's estimated to be approximately the same as we've always done since 1972.
We have the insurance policies on that?
The
Liability?
insurance policy was reviewed by me and City Attorney Gary Gosian. Nothing jumped out at us. Assistant City Manager Miguel Hernandez, he offered to answer some of these questions as it's his bailiwick. He knows a lot of, behind it. So if you want to direct, those to him.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem. In terms of insurance, the city, portion of the city that the city owns is insured. All of that is part of our self-insurance through our Sierra, through the program. The addition to what we're agreeing to for the agreement, that will be noted, and Sierra would be informed that we are now in agreement with LA County to maintain the Wilderness Park area, and then that would be added to our insurance for the next fiscal year. This fiscal year has already been completed, so it would be noted and then added to our next fiscal year, 26, 27 fiscal year.
Because we're self-insured, we don't have an annual policy payment that we have to have for insurance. Is that correct?
There is an annual premium that we pay, and during the renewal process, this is where we add any new facilities or any new agreements in this case, and the adjustment will be made
Okay.
for the new fiscal year.
So there'll be an increase in the cost for this area.
Correct. They will add an increase, but in terms of liability, once the agreement is approved, any liability that occurs between now and then, we are responsible for that liability.
And so going back to Mayor Pro Tem's question, so you said that the resurfacing of the parking lot is 50 to 60K. So that should last us for how long?
Well, it's a resurface. We have no plans to remove and replace. That would be more expensive. We have no plans to expand or anything like that. So that's a pretty rough conservative effort of what we'd be looking at for the next 5 years.
A question about that?
Let me finish my line. And then, how long does the resurfacing last? Approximately?
It's due for a resurfacing, but it hasn't been resurfaced in 20 years.
So it lasts about 20 years?
Yeah, before it really needs to be fixed.
So within this 25-year agreement alone, we're looking at 120,000, okay?
No, one time.
But
Well-
our agreement's for 25
Yeah,
years.
it's only
Okay,
a one-time
yeah.
improvement.
If we did it I mean, you're correct.
But we're
It-
responsible for all improvements for the next 25 years.
But improvements is defined as a certain thing, like it's not not all quote improvements.
Right.
But on that point, part of the Meadows project is going to reshape a portion of that parcel, right? Like next to the parking lot, but we don't expect any of that work to actually be in the parking lot itself?
Well, that was the impetus for us looking for an agreement. And if you look right here, this is the portion of West Carter
Right.
that will be widened by 4 feet to the north.
It just seems to me
That's
that
how
if they're
it'll affect the
widening
park.
if they're widening the street into the parking lot, that maybe the parking lot needs to be resurfaced as part of that project.
I thought the same thing. The representative from the project offered to pay for all of our application fees for this
Well, that was
agreement.
nice of him.
Wasn't willing to offer to pay for the parking lot.
So outside of the resurfacing of the parking lot, what are the, and outside of the insurance, what are the other costs that you expect?
Well, we really don't think the maintenance, and considering this is a wilderness park, since 1972 specifically, the Sierra Madre Environmental Action Council has done most of the volunteer work to keep it in good shape. Our merchants contract, and we are out with the RFP for a new landscaping thing, they did the walking tour. They know that they are going to have to do some upkeep in this park as well. A lot of that might be taking care of trash. It could be removing graffiti at the bathroom, but these are things we've done the whole time. There are occasions where our own public works staff might go and fix a hose bib. We don't expect that to change much at all.
So, looking at the cost, the scope of maintenance is tree trimming, shrubbery, vines and trimming, weed control, litter control, watering and irrigation system, and rodent control. Can you tell me how much our rodent control is currently for this area part of the city?
Well, all of our rodent control is either part of what we call merchants or landscapers. So they generally do the parks, but we also have a pest control contractor we've had for a number of times. So if we're looking for more like public facilities, we would go to pest control. If we were looking for park maintenance, even Easley Field, that would be merchants or whoever is hired next.
Do you know the cost? I mean, we're looking at entering into an agreement. I don't feel comfortable entering agreement without knowing what these costs are. So what is the cost of the total scope of landscape maintenance per year?
I think Director Yanez would have that really fresh in his mind.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council. Approximately $127,000 per year. As we speak currently right now, we are going out to bid. So, as a matter of fact, bids are due this coming Thursday.
127,000 is for merchants per year.
Correct,
for the whole
per year.
city.
Correct, sir.
Oh, I meant for this project. Sorry, sir.
For this project here, what we have right now would be merchants estimated about $2,200, $2,200. Should they happen to go in there for any type of
Tree trimming, shrubbery, vines trimming, weed control, litter control, watering, irrigation systems, rodent control.
correct, which is not often.
So it wouldn't be 2,000 a year.
It's already included in the actual agreement in the 127,000 that we have right now.
Okay, so it's part of, it's already.
It's already part of the agreement, sir.
So we've been paying for this already. We're not taking on any new
No, ma'am.
costs.
Oh,
Correct.
glad you asked.
So, yeah, that was my understanding too. I was going to clarify that as well. I mean, my understanding is that we've been sort of doing this on a handshake since the park was established, and now we're just wanting to actually put it on paper. Well, mainly the county wanted to put it on paper.
So in the history, why did we take this over? Like, I'm looking again at Arcadia. They let LA County do all the maintenance, take care of everything, liability, everything at the LA County Park, even though Arcadia uses it and other residents use their county park in Arcadia. Why have we taken on this cost? Especially, I'm looking at a deficit, and I'm looking at all the costs that we need to cut in order to just have public safety and someone answer 911.
Mr. Carlson would respond to that.
Thank you.
So as mentioned, we have been really doing this work. West Coast Arborist does the trees. There is currently no irrigation system, so that really wouldn't come into it. Part of the reason for getting this agreement is to make sure that it remains a park. There is no guarantee without an agreement that the county would not just close it, probably grade it, and it would just turn into a portion like you see next to any other flood control areas. Problem is also, it would eliminate access to our trails in Bailey. So we thought it was prudent to go ahead and make this agreement. It's essentially what we've been doing the whole time, and it was overdue to get this done right.
And now with you said the changing of the landscape, does that also mean the trails need to be redone like they were in the past fires?
We did fortunately get a grant from LA County to study our trails, both Bailey and Mount Wilson. The amount of
Hold on, I want to be real clear. Is that part of the scope of this?
No.
So the reason I'm asking that is why, if we don't redo our trails, and we can't redo our trails, what's the point of having a park right there?
The point of having a park would be so that we can get a new bridge and we can have a very small portion of what we used to have. Now we do have a grant. We have a contractor Nationwide contractor based in Pasadena, Tetra Tech. They will be spending $50,000 to take a look at the engineering, the hydrology, the soils report for each of our trails. As soon as they're done, we're going to know what's going to happen to our trails. Bailey looks very nerve-wracking to me, as opposed to Mount Wilson, which has been really well kept up by volunteers. So we will know a lot more, but I still think our intention, and even working with FEMA, that's why FEMA was up there, is we get back up, we put that bridge back, we still have that oak grove, and that might be all we can do for our first phase for a while. And the park would give us access to
Yeah.
that.
All right, so why don't we then continue on? Thank you, Annalise Carlson, for this. We'll move on to public comment. Madam City Clerk, do you have any public comment?
Mr. Mayor, we did not receive any speaker cards, nor did the city clerk's office get any emails.
Okay, any further discussion on these items?
Yep. I personally, we were looking at this deficit, we're talking about cutting things like funding for our 4th of July parade. We're talking about cutting funding for senior services, community services. We have a park right now that isn't gonna be open. That can't be open until it has a trail. It's closed right now. We don't have a timeline yet, like Chantry Flats does, for when they're gonna reopen, or even Mount Wilson. And with us looking at these deficits, I have a really hard time dedicating any funding to anything like a project, even if we don't know we can get grants. And look at our grant writer right now has gotten us $0 of grants. I really have a hard time dedicating money that we'll be liable for. We are responsible for this maintenance. We are responsible for these projects. We are signing paper with LA County saying we will pay for this.
We have a procedural problem, FYI, before we go too far into this.
Yes,
It's on the
please.
consent calendar, so we either need to have, if we're gonna take a separate vote on this,
Yep.
we need to remove it
All right.
from the
Okay.
consent calendar and probably approve consent, and then
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, yes. So, I
I move
think-
that we, go ahead.
yes, go ahead.
I make a motion that we remove consent item E from consent
Okay.
calendar, and do we place it under?
Hold on. Madam City Clerk, what's the process? Where do we put, what do we need to do to remove consent item E?
The motion that Mayor Pro Tem is making,
Okay,
I didn't hear the full motion, but it sounds like that's sufficient to move it out of consent
Okay.
and into discussion. And then it's at the mayor and council's discretion where on the discussion, if you want to hear it first, or if you want to hear it at the end.
I don't.
all right,
I'll second your motion.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right.
Thank you.
And why don't we move it to the last item on the discussion? I'll just propose that. Okay. All right, so now we've got consent of 4 items, A through D. Any further discussion on items A through D?
I move to improve items A through D on the consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Okay, so we've got consent agreed. So now we move on to our first public reading, and this will be presented to us. Who is presenting us to this? Is this, okay, Senior Planner Wolf or?
Mayor, Caitlin Huang from.
Oh, Caitlin Huang.
Department will be presenting.
Thank you so much. My apologies.
I'd also like to include the consultant that's on the phone as well.
Okay, can you tell us who is the consultant and who are they with?
That would be Mr. Josh Carmen. He's with Rincon Consultants. Before we begin, I just want to make sure he can hear us. He did let me know that our end was muted during
Yeah.
the previous portions of the meeting. Josh.
Hello, Josh. Are you still with us?
Yes.
Okay, great. And can you hear us okay?
Yep.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. Please proceed.
Good evening, Mayor Parkhurst and Mayor Pro Tem Lowe and the City Council. Tonight, the City Council will be holding a public hearing for the first reading of Ordinance 1467, amendments to Chapter 9.32 for noise and Chapter 8.40 for landscaping equipment. So for the noise ordinance, its purpose is to seek to protect the residents of Sierra Madre from excessive, unnecessary, and unreasonable noises from all sources of the community. The current gaps in our existing noise ordinance would include standards for measuring noise levels for different land uses, and also no baseline specifying ambient noise levels. The noise ordinance was last amended in 2009, imposing hours of operations for leaf blowers, and in 2023, the City Council had directed staff to draft an amendment to update the noise ordinance, which then led to the Planning Commission to hold a public hearing for the noise ordinance, and also recommending City Council adopt the ordinance, while also deferring sections regarding gas equipment or land gardening or landscaping equipment emissions for consideration by either the City Council or the Natural Resources Commission. Following that, the Natural Resources Commission convened and indicated that portions of the ordinance regarding the garden equipment emissions were under their commission's purview, but then deferred regulations of noise generated by those landscaping equipments to the City Council. And around this time, the commission, or the Natural Resources Commission, recommended City Council adopt a separate ordinance for landscaping equipment, considering air quality health instead of the noise levels, in which City Council then adopted through Ordinance 1469, then asked the Planning Commission to reconsider the noise ordinance. So that leads us to currently, so we have contracted with Rincon Consultants, where they identified areas of improvement, and also drafted and prepared and presented the amendments to the ordinance to the Planning Commission. The commission had held one discussion and also 2 public hearings, performing some live edits, and also amending the ordinance and providing staff with direction in finalizing the ordinance, in which they then approved under Municipal Code Text Amendment 25-01, where they recommended City Council adopt the ordinance amending Chapter 9.32 under the Planning Commission resolution. And also in that meeting, or during their review, they also recommended City Council amend Chapter 8.40 for landscaping equipment. And I'll go over these, the amendments for the landscaping equipment in a later slide as well. So for the noise ordinance, the sections to be updated are those listed on screen. And for anyone in the audience or at home that would like to follow along or view the drafted amendments, the QR code on the right-hand side of the screen can be scanned to view that. We're going into some key amendments for Chapter 9.32. Definitions in Section 020 has some redefined and an expanded list of definitions to provide some clarity and also consistency throughout the ordinance. Some of the definitions that you may find would be A-weighted decibels, or dBA, for sound levels, ambient noise levels, and also defined special city-sponsored or city-affiliated events. Under Section 030 for exterior noise standards, this was simplified to apply to all land use types for the impacted property, providing different noise level standards for day and evening time periods. So for in the table below, you can see that the daytime period would begin at 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. With average or LEC noise level dBA for a duration of 10 minutes. That would be for 60 dBA, and for evening time that would be 50. And we also incorporated dBc or frequencies for base levels in this table as well.
Could you describe that a little bit? I don't quite understand the difference between the dBA and the dBc.
So dBA are sound level frequencies that a human ear can respond to. dBc would be lower frequency levels like bass.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Moving forward, section 080 for noise level measurement criteria. This was added to establish some standards and procedures for measuring noise levels for our enforcement by our police department and our code enforcement officer. This would include setting a requirement of a minimum 10-minute duration for readings, and also using standard equipment, for example, an ANSI Type 2 meter at minimum. This meter is or can read both dBA and dBc at the same time, and are typically used for noise surveys or environmental noise measurements. And then going into chapter 8.40 for landscaping equipment, the Planning Commission had recommended City Council amend section 8.40.010 to remove the specified machine or equipment types to generalize them in relation to noise, and then also to align the equipment hours with our city's construction hours of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. On Sundays and holidays. So with those amendments, the City Council may, 1, adopt Ordinance 1467, amending Chapter 9.32 and Chapter 8.40 of Title 8 of the Sierra Madre Municipal Code, or adopt with modifications to the ordinance, or continue consideration of the ordinance, or reject consideration of ordinance number 1467. It is recommended that the City Council adopt Ordinance 1467, amending Chapter 9.32 of Title 9 and Chapter 8.40 of the Sierra Madre Municipal Code. That concludes my presentation. If the council has any questions, I'm open to take any. And also, we have Mr. Josh Carmen with Rincon dialed in as well.
Great, thank you so much. Questions? Who would like to start?
Quick question. I recall the discussion at the Planning Commission on changing the time periods for landscaping to match what existed under construction requirements. Can you refresh our memory, why was that such a big deal for the Planning Commission? Because it's moving it from 8 a.m. in the morning till 7 a.m. for landscaping.
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Goss. So the Planning Commission had mentioned that if you could, or mention a difference between using landscaping equipment and a contractor or starting any construction. Say, for example, if mowing your lawn at 7 in the morning, or at that time was a different time, what would be the difference between if someone is starting construction at their home at 7 in the morning? That justification for that time difference.
So that's what I recall. So I don't really recall any justification for it other than they wanted to just sync it up with the existing construction guideline, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
I had a question on section 6, 9.32.040 for exemptions. A, and it's the exemptions for activities such as school bands, school athletics, school entertainment events, not constituting special events conducted on the grounds of any public or private nursery, elementary, intermediate, or secondary school or college. Why would we accept the noise from school bands and school entertainment? Like, why would it be okay for them to be louder? To have like a loud band or?
Thank you for the question, Mayor Pro Tem.
I think they wouldn't be able to have a loud band because that would be a special event. My reading of that was that if like the band is practicing in the field,
Yeah.
that was exempted because that's not a special event. They're not using it as an event, but they're using it as a school activity.
But why would we allow loud bands to perform at a certain level when we wouldn't allow anyone else to have loud noise? Isn't that
We can
part
get
of-
into discussion. I could
Okay.
I could answer why I think we
Well,
would, but
that's, yeah, that's my question, like why,
Okay.
did they give any validation for why they're exempting those activities?
So the carve-out for exemptions for school institutional special events, those are for their activities that is non-related to, you know, the other uses. So those are the carve-outs that Planning Commission feels like they should be not included in the overall noise threshold.
So they can have, therefore, I guess I'm trying to understand it, they could have a loud band practice all day at any decibel level, according to this exemption, is that correct?
That's correct, and unless it's governed by a master plan conditional use permit for the campus or for the institution.
And we only have, how many master plan conditions do we have with our schools? I believe there's only one?
Currently, we have Alverno.
So we don't have a plan for like Sierra Madre middle school.
So Sierra Madre Middle School and Sierra Madre Elementary School are Pasadena Unified, so they're under a different set of rule.
Okay. Other questions?
yes, I have questions. Sorry.
Yes.
I thought you meant about this particular thing. Right now, under our current noise ordinance, how do we, what is the process for enforcing it? I mean, my sense of trying to read through the red lines to see what the current policy is that even currently, the way that we measure noise is not something that a noisemaker, a homeowner, a landscape company would be able to measure on their own. Like, no one would actually know if the music from their backyard or their lawnmower is actually exceeding these levels. That's the case currently, correct? Even under our current standards?
Thank you for the question, council member. Currently, the police department or code enforcement or our police department, well, our police department currently does not have a sound level meter, but we do receive the noise complaints, and they would go out to the property and provide that reading.
I'm sorry, but you said that we don't have anything to measure, so how could we provide a reading?
It's my recollection that up to this point, the city has been successful in responding to complaints by giving warnings, and every time a warning has been issued, there has been compliance in mitigating that sound. So I don't believe we've needed to provide a quantitative number in order to abate that complaint up until this point.
So meaning that folks call to complain, we don't actually know if the noise is actually in excess of our standards, but we just ask the noisemakers to be quiet, and they do, and that's sort of is that sort of the plain English way of explaining what you just said?
I can't speak on behalf of the code enforcement officers if that is correct, but that was what my understanding was.
And that would also continue to be the case under these new standards, right? Because we're obviously creating more technical standards and having baselines and things like that, but we still don't have any instrument by which to measure if there's actually a violation. Is that correct?
That is correct. The police department would have to purchase 1 or 2 meters to enforce the exterior noise standards.
And what's the cost of the meters?
It's estimated to be $600 to $1,000 for an ANSI Type 2 meter.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. I just wasn't sure if this was actually going to change the practice, and if there, if we were going to get complaints that there's no way to know if I'm in compliance or not. But that's basically where we're at now. There's basically no way to know if I'm playing music in my backyard if that does or doesn't exceed our current standards, and that doesn't seem like it's going to change even under these new standards. What these new standards are likely to do is just allow us to more accurately, if we get the meters, are more accurately measure the sound.
That's correct.
So for Alverno, we have readings that are taken. Who takes the readings?
Thank you for the question. So for Alverno Villa CUP, that the city actually contracted with our police officers that is off duty. They are performing as a monitor to monitor all the noise.
So they have a sound meter to do that with.
Yes, Alverno has a sound meter.
It is Alverno's sound meter.
But is that the kind that we would need to enforce these standards, or is it the kind that would measure the prior standards?
I think the Alverno has a regular meter, and then the one that we're recommending, which has type two type DBA and DBC, that would actually measure the base level result from the special events and weddings and parties.
And since we're on Alverno, correct me if I'm wrong, but I recall when we did our indomitable discussion of the master plan, the noise ordinance, the noise standards in their CUP automatically are updated to our noise ordinance if the noise ordinance is more restrictive than what's in their plan, correct?
That's correct.
Good memory. Other questions?
Yeah, I do have another one, sorry.
Please.
So I noticed in the report that you talked about part of the impetus for doing this refresh was to address idling, the vibration. I didn't see that in the changes. Could you just point to where we've now allowed or included that concern in this ordinance?
Thank you for the question. So actually in the Planning Commission, one of the public hearings, we went over the vibration section and found that it was unable to enforce, or there's a lack of ability to enforce the for vibration, and then they had removed that portion of the drafted ordinance.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Other questions? So I had a question. So under 8.40.10, it says it's unlawful for any person to use or operate or cause to be operated any machine or other landscaping equipment, and then added, or any other machinery or other powered mechanical or electrical device or any hand tool which creates a loud, raucous noise. So this could be any, so is this limited to landscaping equipment?
Maybe I can word it kind of like what I think you're getting at. Is it meant to be is it meant to exclude the landscape equipment? Is there a reason it says machine or other landscape equipment rather than landscape equipment or machine?
Well, it says, so actually, so my question is that it seems to broaden the definition. So what I'm trying to wrap my head around is that we have this section chapter 840, landscaping equipment. We have 840.10, landscaping equipment. But then we have as a part of Part A, it says any other machinery or powered mechanical electrical device or any loud tool. So to me, like, this opens it up to power tools, drills, anything else, but it's under landscaping equipment. So my question's kind of, my twofold is it limited to landscaping equipment because it's under chapter 840 of landscaping equipment, or is it intended to be broader than landscaping equipment? That's the first part of the question. And the second part of the question is if it's just limited to landscaping equipment, where do we capture, and do we capture any other loud noises outside of landscaping equipment? Does that make sense? Do you understand what the two questions? Okay.
Understood. From my understanding, thank you for the clarification on that. It is meant to relate to landscaping equipment, but other machinery or powered mechanical or electrical devices could include a drill or
So if I were to,
Before we move on, can we point out that that isn't actually the end of the sentence?
Yeah.
It says, other machinery, other power mechanical, et cetera, loud raucous noise, identified by future city council resolution. Like, you're only looking at the added language, you're not finishing the sentence. So actually, I think it would have to be
It would
other
have to be added.
machinery, other powered mechanical, blah, blah, blah. That would have to be specified in a future city council resolution to be applicable.
so if my neighbor is remodeling their house and it's 6 a.m., they're out there trying to beat the heat and using a saw, it would not apply to this because it would have to be a separate
Yeah, it would
separate
be separately
resolution.
it would be separately governed by the construction provision, which is not what we're talking, I mean, the construction provision is on the same time frame.
Yeah, so that actually goes to my next question is that I don't know where, I couldn't find where the construction.
It's not in the changes, it's in the actual code that was attached as attachment E, the noise code. So the report only
Covers the
highlights
changes.
the changes and does not include the entirety of the code.
Great.
Yeah, so you have to actually look at the code attachments.
And so what section is it in the code? Because I was trying to find that, and that's where, I mean, we're very close to discussion, but
I think it's in the other
We could put that
title.
as a question. Do you know where that is in the code?
Yeah, if I may, so construction use hours would be under exemptions in the noise ordinance, under 9.32.040, or amended to 040, previously 060.
Yeah.
so
C.
powered equipment, so is,
It's attachment E, page 4.
right, but then, so it is 932.40 exemptions D, but that means that it's exempted, because the following activities shall be exempted from provisions of this chapter. Powered equipment for repetitive use in residential areas. So the drill is exempted from the noise ordinance.
That is correct.
Well, within the hours of use.
yeah.
Outside of the window that is specified in section D, which is 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., you still cannot use
Or
hours.
any
But I
other
think, I mean, I
machinery.
don't wanna get too far down this like sausage making, but there has to be an actual provision in the code prohibiting it, to which this is an exemption. We can't be finding the prohibition in the exemptions.
The standard is that outside of these exemptions, anytime there's the same threshold of,
Right, it's just the general,
Limit.
it's just the general noise
and so
ordinance.
it's anytime that's where
Right.
that chart, I believe it's under 932.030 exterior noise standards, that's what applies across the board. However, that's a low enough threshold that typically these things that we've provided an exemption for would otherwise be in violation, which is why there's an exemption for their use.
Right, exactly, thank you.
Thank you. Now, that's, okay. Then I had one other question. So, hold on, I gotta find it here. So I was confused by the language of 93260, which states the city manager is authorized to grant a permit to temporarily exceed the noise limits of this chapter for as short duration as possible, up to 3 months. So the language is just a little bit wonky to me. So it's meant to be as short as possible, but for no longer than 3 months. Is that right?
That is correct, up to 3 months.
Okay. Okay, great. That ends my questions. Any other questions? All right, so this is a public hearing. So now we'll open up to public comment. Madam City Clerk, do we have any comment cards, or did you receive any comments for this item?
There was one email that the city clerk's office received. It was forwarded to the city council earlier yesterday. The email was from Ellen Ma. The city council has those comments for consideration. As of this evening, there were no speaker cards submitted.
Great, thank you very much. Okay.
I'll start. Personally, I'm not going to re-legislate what the fine work of our consultant and our planning commission on the actual standards, because I do not purport to be at any level a noise specialist, and so I will trust that we've vetted this through 2 public hearings otherwise, and through our consultant who has expertise in this area. So I'll just say that, like, I don't feel like I want to weigh in on whether these levels are appropriate or not, and I feel like the general time zone seemed good to me in terms of the 7 to 10 being the delineation between day and night. I will say that I think to Councilmember Goss's point earlier, I don't feel compelled to sync up the construction with the gardening or landscaping, because frankly, landscaping happens every day on almost every property, and construction happens much less frequently on many fewer properties at any given time. So I actually don't mind that the landscaping is a little bit more restrictive, because it's happening, seems like 24 hours a day. So, I mean, that I would put that out there, that I don't feel the need to sync that, and I would actually leave it the way it is. I don't think we're getting any complaints that people are starting too late on landscaping, so that would be my only change to what's been provided to us. And I also just would say that I'm very much in favor, if we're going to have standards, that we should have a way to measure and enforce them, because it seems sort of silly to have all of these very technical standards and have no way of measuring and enforcing them. So I would say that we should probably plan on buying one of these relatively inexpensive machines to do the readings as soon as possible, because I think it's embarrassing that we would have standards that we can't actually measure.
So is your thought would be for under 840-10 that you would reject the change from 8 a.m. to 7 a.m.?
Right now, it's changed from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I would keep it at 8 to 6. Frankly, I have not heard a groundswelling of people who want earlier or later.
My recollection on the intent behind syncing those up was for ease of enforcement, so that code enforcement officers aren't flipping through code when they get a complaint and can know whether it is or isn't allowed. And then secondarily, viewing it from the perspective of the receiving end of the noise, not necessarily like what the source is, but that if you are experiencing either way that level of noise, it doesn't really matter where it's coming from, it should be either allowed or not allowed during those same frames.
I appreciate that, but like I said, I think that the culprit for most people's concern about noise levels is gardening, and that because it is so prolific, I mean, almost every property owner has it happening at least once a week or once every other week. So it is happening
I don't
all day,
disagree
every day.
with that point. I think that is a very valid point in terms of what the majority of those sources are. I was just explaining what I
I appreciate
recall.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, any other discussion?
I completely agree with Councilmember Creeves on everything she said.
So I'm more swayed by having it consistent, so that the code enforcement officer has the same, but it's not something that would cause me to oppose it. I just think for consistency, it makes sense to have the same time. So to our deputy city attorney's point is, you don't have to go flipping through the code to figure out which
Or code enforcement doesn't have to be out at certain times. It won't be consistent, like, oh, I must respond now. to know whether it's construction or lawn mowing. I can't just go by the report. I actually have to go out there. So that's manpower that you're changing times that when if it's just one set time. That's
He has to
consistent.
go out no matter what. I mean, if he's getting a noise complaint
Not-
that he has to identify or that he has to enforce, he's gonna have to go out either way, or make a call.
Well, if someone says, well, if he sits there and they actually, well, no, but actually, do you hear a lawn mowing noise or do you hear a construction noise? Do you hear a drill or do you hear this? Oh, it's not a violation.
Yeah,
Doesn't have to come
No,
out.
I don't see, look, I'm just looking at it from the point of view of people who want to, for one reason or another, they want to sleep in, or maybe they start their workday at their home office early. They just don't want to be bothered that early. And I'm not too concerned about the code enforcement officers.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the code enforcement officer has to look at the code all the time, because we have all sorts of codes that need to be enforced, and I think having two different times for two very distinct, I think I know whether I'm complaining about a lawnmower or a leaf blower or a construction site. I think I know the difference.
And who's our planning commission liaison right now? I can't remember.
I am.
Oh, and did you remember them discussing this?
Yes, and
Just for consistency.
that was the only, and I just questioned
Okay.
the staff, that was the only reason. And I understand, it's kind of a strange way of thinking about equality. Well, if we're gonna treat construction one way, we need to treat landscape the same way, but it doesn't fit. The homeowners I know avoid early morning noise if at all possible, so. I'd hate to say, oh, well, I just made a, by the way, your neighbor can now have a lawnmower at 7 instead of 8 o'clock. I don't think that's gonna make us very popular.
I also feel just like if you have construction next to you, it sucks, but it's also a limited period of time,
Yes,
right? Like your
right.
neighbor was redoing their house for a set period of time, and it'd be great if that started at 8 too, frankly, but I get like also wanting people to have enough time to get things done, and so I don't wanna change that standard, but I just feel like that is something you just sort of say, okay, I'm gonna deal with my neighbor doing construction for the next X months, but they're gonna have their landscapers there every week. That's my concern.
So, we've got slightly different opinions on it.
Is there
I
any
think
other
we're close
aspect
to-
that we need to discuss?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, is there any other aspect?
I would like to
Very
reword, in both B as well as, in the same section, A, B, and D, where it says, any machine or other landscape equipment or any other machinery. I would hope it says, any landscape machine or equipment, or any machinery or other powers. I don't like that any machine is separated out from landscape equipment. Exactly why you had that question. Do they mean landscape equipment, or do they mean this? I'd
Oh,
like
it's
to be-
because leaf blowing was struck, and so it used to say any leaf blowing machine
Yes.
or other landscaping equipment.
So can it say any landscape equipment or machine?
Yeah, I think that's a cleaner way of saying
Yeah.
that.
So where's the change?
Okay, so go back to where you're looking at the times, under 8.40.
Yeah,
And
I'm
then
right there.
A,
Yep.
as well as B,
Yeah, so,
as well as D,
yep,
consistently would say, any landscape, machine, or other equipment, comma, or any other machinery, and the sentence continues. So we're just taking the word landscape and moving it away from between other and equipment and moving it
So that
before
lands-
machine.
So that landscaping
Landscape
modifies both
machine.
machines and equipment.
Or
So
other
it's- To your point, it's clear that this is applicable to landscaping
Landscaping.
equipment, not a drill.
landscaping machine or other landscaping
No,
equipment.
or other equipment. You don't even have to say you don't say landscaping twice.
Any landscaping machine or other equipment.
Yes,
Okay,
Makes sense to me.
thanks.
all right, any other?
Is that a sufficient, I guess together, are these sufficient changes that we would have to do a second, first reading?
You're just
Because
changing
it
the
doesn't
order.
change the meaning of the wording, it's just the wording. I don't believe we need to do another reading.
What about the time change that we're talking about?
The time change might require a second reading because it is substantively changing what it's saying.
Okay.
A second first reading.
Yeah, a second reading of the new.
first- a
a
second-
first
a
reading
second
of
New
the
first
second
reading.
version of that.
And would it be on consent, or would it have to be part of discussion?
I believe we could do a consent item if it's already been,
So we'd do a double consent on it, would be consent first reading, consent second reading, it's just the change of time.
I can look into that before the next meeting to be sure of that, but at this time, that would be my understanding.
Well, we will have a 5th council member here as well, so
Yeah.
that could break a tie if we're still tied.
Like I said, this isn't Hill. I'm prepared to vote yes on it. So it's,
I do have one more
okay.
section. So involving schools, we've had lots of complaints of Sierra Madre Middle School. We've obviously had complaints about Alverno Heights. I guess I'm wondering why school noise would be exempt, because let's say your band wants to start at 0 period in the morning and they're playing above 70 decibel points right next to your house in the field at 6 a.m., 7 a.m. before class starts.
We can't legislate anything noise coming from either of the public schools.
We
So-
can if it's in the property. That one line I think I asked you, Miguel, about was, or maybe I asked.
I don't, well, that, I don't, then the code's wrong. Like, we have no jurisdiction over those schools.
Says,
Well, I think we should ask the deputy city
Right.
attorney. What's your?
No, we don't.
there's a line about property line within the city.
Can you point me to where you're?
I'm trying to find it.
Oh,
I know what
yeah,
you're
I
talking
what
about.
Talking about too.
Yeah, it's if it was in another city, if the
Oh.
complaint comes from say Pasadena and it's a source within Sierra Madre,
It's at the boundary. I see what you mean.
boundary. Yes.
I think that had to do more
Sierra.
with measurement, right? My understanding
Yeah.
was that more that, like, if someone from Pasadena was complaining about Alverno across the street, we would do our noise measurement at the city boundary in Sierra Madre, not at the Pasadena residence
That's
house.
correct. This is in terms of where we take the reading.
So you're saying that at any hour of any time of day, the public school district can be as loud as they want and play all hours of the night, and we can't do a single thing about
They
it?
may have their own rules that we don't know
No, but
about,
this-
but we
this-
can't enforce it.
I mean, separately, if it rose to the level of becoming a nuisance, that is still actionable even outside of having a city code to say that. But that would mean that it would be
Just because
impairing
it's-
somebody's
The school
enjoyment of their
district
property
is not
regularly.
governed by our municipal code at all. We have no jurisdiction over those schools.
And we can continue to look into that, but that is my
So then why would
understanding.
we pay for their crossing guards? Sorry.
It's called intergovernmental relations.
Anyway, so I mean, so I get your
So
point.
they can have gardeners at 5 a.m.
There may be other superseding, like,
Well, I've never known
But-
that.
but
I have
it-
no idea. We can't regulate a
but-
single thing that happens on campus.
But we're not getting complaints on this, so it's like.
We are.
When I didn't get
Middle
one.
school, we had, last year we had our board member reach out to myself and I believe it was Ed at the time, he was, well, it must have been when Ed was mayor, and say that they had to meet with a neighbor because of the noise, and did we want to join because the noise was so high, and PD at the time was getting calls from the neighbor. Gooden Schools had calls
They're
as a
private.
neighbor, but they're private. So we're saying that because a school is private or public, they don't have to obey our codes and our laws? They only have to
they
be
own
their
that
own?
property, like, it'd be like, it's like the county. The county
It's
is
like a-
not, the county is not subject to our rules if they had county property in our city.
It's a government in
What
a
does the county
government.
park then do? If we're gonna take over liability, we can't designate the laws?
That's a
No,
separate.
my question is this though, if it's public school, if it's owned by Pasadena Unified,
Let's have a separate discussion about that. I'm just saying, like, if you're worried about the middle school having a band, this isn't gonna
Yes.
matter. So all I'm saying is that we don't need to discuss that here because we can't.
so why exempt it?
It's
Well,
not exempted though.
It is, it's on the exemption list. Public or private schools.
I think it's just to eliminate any potential conflict.
Public or private nursery, elementary, intermediate, or secondary school or college,
I mean, we could take out public because it doesn't matter, but.
which I didn't know, so.
But, but really, I mean, to me, it's just about not creating another, I don't know. I mean, I don't have a problem with it, but I can see why that does seem a little bit arbitrary. I am not aware of complaints within the city about noise coming from school other than Alverno and the middle school. And the middle school, I know PUSD has taken steps to do certain mitigation. I know they've, like, for example, taken away the basketball hoops so that the kids don't play basketball in that area that has that bad sound. And so I know the school district has been somewhat responsive in some ways, but not in other ways.
All right, learn something new every day.
So, I think I'd like to try to continue to move this forward. So, I think I'll go so far as to entertain a motion on the noise ordinance.
Well, we have to, are we,
We can, well, I'm
should
looking
we
at,
discuss whether we're agreeing with the time change? So if we change the time back to what this is proposed.
Right.
We go for another reading, a new
Correct.
first reading. Okay.
yep, that seems like the direction that the
Okay.
council's going.
Sorry.
Yes.
Agreed.
Okay.
Okay,
And then we can obviously revisit in,
Yeah.
in the second first reading if
Hey, if
our
we
tie-
decide to
if
go
our
back to the,
tiebreaker returns.
if we come back to the first initial thing, can that then instead be the second reading?
Yeah, hypothetically.
Hypothetically, can we word it that way when?
so I, like I said, it's not something that I'm gonna die on, so I am, you know, I think Councilmember Creep's point, that this has gone through the planning commission at least twice, it's gone through the natural resources, we've got a expert on it, like, I think it makes sense, I'm not gonna quibble about an hour. It's not enough to vote against something like that that's gone through this much amount of work, that's.
And maybe if they come back the next time we read it and they have more validation for some reason, they can come in and discuss it.
So, coming back again, I'll entertain a motion,
Are we actually
that this-
moving, or is it just conducting the first reading?
I have on here that we have to have a motion on it, but Madam City Clerk, do we have to have a motion on approving it, or?
Mr. Mayor, if the city council is wishing to continue this public hearing so that the city staff can make amendments based on the direction that was provided, we can continue this, and we can bring back, if that's the council's desire, we can bring back an amended ordinance for a second first reading at the next council meeting.
Okay, so we'd continue it, but would it go on consent at that point? I was understanding it went on consent, so my mind was going that we would need to approve it with with who we had here, and then that we would have it approved again on consent, and then a second reading on
The
consent.
council's already received testimony and provided an opportunity to receive testimony from the public, and so you could close the public hearing and direct staff to come back to have a second first reading on the consent calendar at the next council meeting.
Okay, so if we close the public hearing, then do we vote on it now, or do we wait till the next meeting because of the modification?
You don't have to vote now if you're providing direction, and you can vote on it when it returns to council with the amendments.
And do we have to do anything formal to close the hearing portion?
I believe you've closed it already when public comment,
All
when you
right.
called for public comment.
So then we will continue this to the next meeting, I think is the direction that we're giving. Seeing no disagreement, we can move on to the discussion item.
Mr. Mayor, I believe our acting city attorney may have something he needs to alert us to with respect to the schedule, or no?
We take a brief recess.
Okay.
Take a brief recess? Okay, we'll take a 5-minute recess. Oh, yes, I see them here. Great.
Do you think our PIO is gonna be stuck for a while? Should we
Okay.
see if we can,
Can we see-
can we proceed without a clerk?
I don't know. Can we?
I don't think we can.
Oh, we can't?
So maybe she should leave it to the PD?
I would,
Makes it tough when you have double jobs.
yeah.
Can she deputize you? Just kidding.
Because we need the city clerk here to proceed, don't we?
Is she unavailable?
Yes,
Currently,
she's PIO right now.
I understand.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Better get your suit clean.
What's that?
Better get your suit clean.
the duo thing is,
I'm leaving town.
It's not on my phone, it's on my iPad.
oh
My-
no.
My boyfriend is the communications executive director for Ontario. He goes vague. Okay.
All right, we will call the meeting back to order. Apologize. We'll go into the next item, and the first item on discussion Deputy City Attorney, Omar Chavera, can you go ahead and give us a presentation?
Yes, I believe
Oh.
we have some slides to accompany.
Yes. Sorry, Mr. Carlson. They're up. Ready to go.
Awesome, thank you. So this is an opportunity to review Chapter 12.34, which imposes requirements for special event permitting, and to discuss options for First Amendment protected activities. Go to the next slide. So currently, Chapter 12.34 imposes requirements such as insurance, indemnity, and timing for all permitting applications, and this has come to light given the recent No Kings protest, which raised some logistical concerns in being able to utilize this chapter. So my recommendation is that we review the chapter code requirements and consider potential amendments for First Amendment protected activities, or exempting First Amendment activities from what exists in the code. And this is just an overview of what I just stated. So as you guys may already be aware, there were some recent events in which city staff learned of a planned No Kings protest for June 14th through social media, which was approximately 1 week prior. This is when it came to light. So staff contacted the organizer to gather information about the event, and it was confirmed that the event was planned and requested to rent Kirsting Court, which is a park, for that purpose. And our police chief contacted the organizer to obtain estimates of attendance and to ensure proper staffing and safety measures. Based on the request to rent Kirsting Court, staff proceeded with initiating a standard park rental and special event permitting process, which requires the application that under 12.34, which requires liability insurance, indemnification, and city fees be covered. The organizer expressed concerns regarding the provisions with insurance and indemnification requirements and requested that they meet in person. And during that meeting, we reviewed our requirements for a park rental and special event permit, and specified that without a permit or paying the fees, the rally can still, or protest could still proceed, but that it would not receive a permit. And at that time, the organizer left, but indicated that they would attempt to obtain the required insurance. At a later date, the organizer emailed staff asking whether she could purchase insurance without indemnifying the city, and staff had not yet responded when the organizer sent a social media announcement to registrants that the event was canceled due to refusal to issue a permit. However, on June 11th, the city manager had reached out to offer waiving fees and the insurance requirements, and ultimately no application was received by the city, which is why thus there was no permit given. The protest still took place, and it proceeded peacefully. There were around 750 plus attendees, and we received no complaints about injuries, damage, or vandalism related to the event. And because we did have notice of the event, we still proceeded with having Public Works remove patio furniture from the park, contacting Metro to reroute bus service, and scheduling additional police officers for any crowd management that might be necessary.
Can I ask quick questions about your analysis?
Of course.
So can you rent? Was it a rental agreement they wanted to rent Kirsting Court?
So there's kind of a two-pronged part here. The park rental is one piece of it, and
But we don't rent Kirsting Court, do we? I'm asking.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, we do rent, Kirsting Court is considered a park.
Oh,
I didn't know that.
I thought, okay. I know.
I was
kidding.
thinking the same
And
thing.
number
No
two,
kidding.
the letter that was a response.
You get an alcohol
Did we,
permit?
did the city also receive
get a
that letter
booze
where it
permit?
said city's refusal to issue a permit, quote unquote?
Yeah, no.
I believe that this was
Right.
via social media, so it was accessible for us
So-
to see.
It says before staff had an opportunity to respond, sent a message to event registrants stating the event was canceled due to refusal to issue a permit, quote unquote. Did the city also receive that letter? Because I know the chief was in contact with her also.
Mayor Pro Tem, the city did not receive a actual letter. It was a social media post that we've intercepted or saw, noticed, that the event was being canceled because of the requirements for the permit.
So it wasn't necessarily refusal to issue a permit.
Correct. We
Thank
did
you.
not refuse.
So to provide a little bit of framework on why First Amendment activities are distinct in these permitting situations, the traditional public forum includes places like public streets, sidewalks, and parks, and the only restrictions that can be permitted through a permitting scheme are those that are reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions, and they must be content neutral, not overly broad, and narrowly tailored to serve a significant governmental interest and leave open ample alternatives for the communication. And in these traditional public forums, regulations that are brought into a lawsuit are presumptively invalid, so they're really highly protected.
So is requiring insurance, does that pose problem with this First Amendment legal framework?
Yes, and we will address that. There are some situations in which there are events that we can require insurance for.
Okay.
But we can go to the next slide, I'll get into that. One of the issues with differentiating a First Amendment activity and other special events, when we require insurance, there's going to be a lot of situations in which insurance in the public market doesn't want to provide insurance for these type of protests, and then at that point it becomes based on the content of the protest, and that's something that we are not allowed to not permit for based on the content of their message. Does that make sense?
That's because the insurance company isn't a governmental agency, so they can discriminate on the basis of content, but the
Right.
city as a governmental agency cannot. And so I guess the concern is that if you have a strict insurance requirement, sort of knowing that there's a likelihood that certain types of First Amendment events will fail to get insurance, it's basically a de facto prohibition.
Exactly, yeah.
Got it. Are you aware of any of the No Kings, I mean, there are like over 2,000 of these events across the country and actually outside the U.S. as well. Do you know of any of them in the U.S.? Do we know of any anecdotes if that they had to get insurance and were able to get insurance?
As far as I'm aware, a majority of them were actually unpermitted,
The
period.
majority of it were unpermitted. Okay, got it. All right, thank you.
So the purpose in still having a permitting scheme that allows for First Amendment activities is that it provides an opportunity to address traffic and safety concerns. Permitting in these situations, though, you have to be mindful of things like the insurance and indemnity considerations and what we require costs for, because those can also be related to the content of the message. And there has to be a carve out for spontaneous events in most situations, because our other permitting schemes do require advance notice, and the whole point of a protest, right, is that it's often responding to live time events, and there is little planning in advance, so we can ask for as much advance notice as possible. And even in the situation of what happened with the No Kings protest, even without a permit, we were still able to respond because we had some notice. But it can't be that we're requiring notice in a way that's prohibitive of allowing them to still get a permit. We can go to the next slide. So as our code is written right now, it applies to protests as an extension of rallies within 12.34010. And the requirements under 1234.020 require these permits for events with over 200 attendees where there's only incidental sidewalk use, or events where it's over 25 attendees if there's more than incidental sidewalk use. And the requirements, as I've mentioned before, include indemnity, city costs be covered with the carve-out that except for those that are due to the controversy of the message, which will come into play later because I think that's actually useful in getting around some of the other problematic pieces of this code, and insurance. Under the advance notice that we do require, there is an exception at the discretion of the city manager when they find good cause, and that can pose problems in terms of what amount of discretion there is because we don't detail in the code what those specific requirements would entail for finding good cause or waiving the timing requirements for those activities.
Do we define incidental?
Where do you,
Incidental sidewalk use.
Not within 12.34. There might be other sections of code that
Okay.
I think
specify.
incidental means like walking on the sidewalk to get to the event. Like a protest on the sidewalk would not be incidental use.
That'd be more than incidental.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And typically, why that's important is that the sidewalks still need to be available for other public use,
Yep.
which is why that is a differentiating
Got it.
point. So we've already gone over most of this, so we can, well, actually go back for one moment. The other piece of the code that I recommend we look at is the findings section, which currently requires things that make sense for other special events, but aren't necessarily applicable in situations of loosely organized activities or spontaneous events that might arise under First Amendment protected activities. For example, one of them is about access to bathrooms, adequate trash cans, things that might not make sense to require finding or that we couldn't actually make a finding for.
Could make an adverse finding for, is that correct?
Right, but we're requiring the findings for the permit. So in lieu of that, if I'm recommending that we avoid requiring the findings for that, I would point out that there can still be conditions attached to a permit in which some of these findings could still come into play if they made sense for that event. And we can still enforce conditions on a permit. And in fact, it's actually better because it's more tailored to that specific event rather than these blanket findings that would apply for every type of event. So the first option is to leave our code as is, and that obviously risks the exact same problem coming up again where somebody wants to host an event, wants to coordinate with the city, but we're unable to actually check the boxes in our code to be able to work with them and limit the risks. And I think this is the least desirable option, in that we want to be able to work with event organizers, and that helps both sides. That helps them in managing their event, and it helps us in responding to what risks there might be, and working together in mitigating things like where the route of the march would take place, or having it be in a park rather than in a street, things like that are just more obtainable if we are going to allow a permit.
And who is the person that does that coordination? Is it does it go through planning, the planning department, or?
I believe that right now it goes through the city manager.
So someone shows up to the desk and they say they want to have
The mayor, the coordination would go through community services.
community services. So someone comes up and says, I'm thinking of having a rally or a protest, and then they walk up to the desk, and then someone from community services would come out and talk with them about it.
That is correct, Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
And I also want to mention, with option one, our code was last amended in 2012. And so there has been an evolution of case law since then, which is why I don't recommend leaving it as is. So the next option would be waiving some of the pieces of the code that do pose problems specifically for First Amendment activities, being indemnity and insurance, the finding requirements. I think some of the findings could be left in place, or like I said, we can just require those as a condition on the permit. Waiving the section, I believe it's 12.34.040 about a timing requirement carve out for First Amendment activity permitting. I think honestly getting rid of that altogether then reduces any risks that would be associated with having overly broad discretion in finding a good cause standard. And instead there are some cities that just have a provision that asks for as much advance notice as possible. And for other types of events, we can still require advance notice. This is just in regards to First Amendment protected activity.
So, and the people that benefit from the advance notice the most is going to be our utilities department, police department.
Correct.
I mean primarily police, but secondary utilities if some trash cans or equipment or something has to be moved. Is that right?
Right, and then things like with public transit routing, and if we need to block off any streets, like getting barricades on one side.
So this would be like pretty please type of thing? Like we would really appreciate it if you did it, but we don't have to.
For the most part, because what has been allowed by courts in terms of still requiring notice for First Amendment protected activities is so minimal that I think if we ask them for as much as possible, that actually might get us more than saying you only need to give us 24 hours or 48 hours or whatever it would be. There are still, even in codes that do require a notice, there are still carve-outs for spontaneous events, and so that's why I think just leaving it blanket, like as much as possible, is maybe just the easiest route, but that's just a option, a suggestion. And right now we are requiring typically 10 days notice is what the permitting code section says.
Okay. Okay.
The third option is similar to option 2, but it's a little bit different in that we're not we're exempting the First Amendment activities from what still would stand as municipal code. So we could do that through 2 routes. The first would be that the city council make the finding that under 12.34020D, where it says that this only applies for situations that are constitutional, essentially, that in no situation are First Amendment activities going to be permitted through this and be constitutional. So therefore it's always unconstitutional and they don't fall under this because they never meet 12.34020D. The second option would be that we do amend code but expressly exempt First Amendment activities. So we still leave the rest of the code, but there could be changes made like striking the carve out for the notice requirement, etc.
Other questions from the council?
Is there it was clear to me that you were not recommending option 1, but as between option 2, 3A, and 3B, do you have a recommendation as a staff recommendation?
I recommend option 2, and that I think amending the code is cleaner than just requiring that at an administrative level we say this is never constitutional, so it never applies, and then leaning on staff to uphold that. I think changing the codes actually reflect what we want to happen is the cleanest. It just is probably easier for you guys to say this is not constitutional, and that's that, and then have it be at an administrative level.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
And under that same line, I see that the personal costs can also be waived. I did notice that in some research that cities do require the personal cost, but if it is a hardship, then they go ahead and pretty much grant or take away that cost. Would that benefit us in somehow? Because the cost would be so
There have also
high?
been cases that it has been problematic in what it is that you require for somebody to show that
Okay.
they have a financial hardship.
Good point.
So I have seen that, and that is a route available. I just don't recommend it.
Okay.
Other questions?
Nope.
All right, this is a discussion item. We'll now open up for public comment. Madam City Clerk, have you received any comment cards for public comment?
We did, Mr. Mayor, from one member of the public, Lauren Pressman.
All right, Ms. Pressman. All right. If there's no other public comment, we'll close, if there's no other comment, we'll close public comment and bring it back for discussion.
No other speaker cards, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Discussion. So,
I'll start. I
yeah,
mean,
please.
I-
Yeah.
So I'm trying to keep in mind what the city needs to operate properly and protect all of its interests and all the rest. But I'm also biased in this. I'm a very free speech oriented person. So I have a difficult time even asking for permits or notices or anything like that. Because I just don't think government should be in the business of telling people that they can or can't protest. So I'm looking for these options, and I'm trying to figure out which is the least restrictive option. You seem to be saying 2, but 3B looks even less restrictive to me. Would that be the case?
The outcome would be largely the same,
Okay.
in that at the end of the day, it allows for First Amendment protected activities to still receive a permit.
Mhm.
It's just how you accomplish that by either option 2, waiving a bunch of these requirements through amending the code, or when you're looking at 3B, that would be more up to your guys' discretion in terms of what the potential amendments would be. What comes to mind for me is changing, getting rid of 12.34020D and the section 040 about First Amendment processing, and just exempting it from everything. So at the end of the day, the result is largely the same, but I guess if you're asking what's broader, perhaps 3B is actually broader because it's exempting it.
Would we have to have a definition of First Amendment activities, though, and then somebody within the staff would have to decide whether or not the particular event satisfied that? I guess that would be my concern, is that if we don't have a relatively straightforward, relatively objective standard, I don't really want to put the burden on, our
Staff.
community services department to decide whether
What's expressive
whether
or not.
this particular thing is the thing. And that's why I would probably err more on the side of the option 2, because I think it would provide more guidance. And I think there's 2 things. One, I think some organizers might actually like the idea of a permit, that they have a sense of like, okay,
Official?
it's a little bit more official. I feel like I've worked with the city, like it makes it seem a little bit more permissive. But also, to your point, I think it's good for us to ask people to tell us what they're doing, and we can decide when they come and say, this is what's happening, okay, we can't regulate that at all, because
Yeah,
that is so clearly a First Amendment thing. But I like the idea of knowing if we can, because, it was important, I think, at that event that we had, some planning in advance, and, I think it helped make it a smoother, more successful event because we had some pre-planning.
To qualify what I said, my only concern would be, okay, how does this bear on potential traffic problems, public safety, or sidewalk use, things of that nature? As it turned out, it didn't have any bearing on it at all. So it's like a problem that's not really a problem.
I can give you some opinions I've seen in other cities, is when we don't have this exception, and I agree that option 2 is the more simple for staff as well as for the direction of being able to get the permit. It's not as systematic in everything you have to go through to qualify. But say Glendale, when there's a protest on Armenian Genocide Day, they end up not getting a permit at all because of these processes. And so what happens is then it's up to word of mouth of that person planning the movement or the rally to go to PD or go to the city and say, this is what I'm doing. But that wouldn't necessarily happen if they don't have to get a permit because it's too hard to qualify. I think by doing option 2, that again frees up the ability to easily get the permit, and then it keeps collaboration between the planners and the event with the police department and the city so they can plan more appropriately what might be needed, and then they're on
Keeps
call.
the dialogue open.
And they know what's coming, so if it does get bigger than they need to or anything happens, they're ready and they have alternates that they can do, like putting up the street blockers if they need to, or
making sure that Area D knows this is happening,
Yes.
so if something goes sideways, that we've already sort of
Pre-planned.
pre-baked in potential help if things go out of
Agreed.
Not as planned. I mean, I think to your point, we would exempt, like, anything spontaneous is spontaneous. I mean, we can't really, people just decide to show up and protest something that's happened. You know, that's happened when there's been declarations of war or, you know, whatever it might be. Like, we can't really regulate that. And those tend to be less broadly attended anyway, just because of their nature. They haven't been advertised. It's not like you can get 1,000 people to a place without, you know, some measure of organization.
I think I kind of agree with the direction everyone's going, is that, you know, we want to support this, we want to collaborate with it, and we want to keep, you know, our very first and fundamental priority is keeping people safe, right? And so the idea of notifying Area D, of being able to remove equipment or tables and chairs to make it so that the area is more easily accessible, to be able to have police just, you know, I mean, Chief was walking around in a informal T-shirt and people were taking selfies with him. I mean, I thought that was the best part of the whole thing, is that people appreciated him being there to be able to support everyone. So whatever the process is, I'd like to make it so that we continue that type of collaboration and support of this. We want people to be able to express their First Amendment. If they want to invite the whole city to come, great. How can we do it in a way that we support them so that everybody remains safe, whether it's people, whether it's property, whether it's businesses, whatever it is.
I do have a question. Like, you mentioned the Santa Monica approach about sort of designating certain areas for certain purposes. I thought that was interesting, and that might help, I don't mean regulate in the bad sense, but help address some of the safety and access concerns that we were talking about for some of the spontaneous things. So I wasn't sure how you envisioned, if we were to talk about something like that, how that would then interact with changes to the code.
Can I piggyback on that for a second? Is you know, I've seen in many places that there's a free speech area. Like, if you go over to the Rose Bowl, there's an area that's designated for free speech. So how does that work into all of that? It's like how would we designate it, and what would it, like, what are the requirements around that?
Yeah, I think Santa Monica has a free speech area, which is in front of their city hall, the lawn in front of their city hall. So we would find a space that was analogous in that it didn't present traffic or safety issues, and wasn't going to be restricting competing uses of the area. So, for example, that it wasn't like a sidewalk where other pedestrians would want to be walking at the same time, and essentially make a carve out for that always being available for First Amendment protected activity. That could come under option either 2 or 3, in that 2, we're already making amendments, so that could be another proposed amendment, would be adding that. And then for option 3, it could always be added. If we were already going to expressly exempt First Amendment activity, we could then include that while not permitted, it's always permitted at.
That's an option though, not a requirement, correct?
It's not required that we designate a space
No,
like that.
it's not required, they have to only go there, it's an option for.
Correct.
Okay.
It's just in particular in Santa Monica, I think it was used as, earlier I mentioned that one of the requirements for a time, place, manner restriction is that there's ample alternatives, and this provides that there's an alternative. So for example, if you were going to require that they either indemnify or provide insurance or blah blah blah, if there's an alternative still being that they can use this space regardless, that is one way of providing an alternative.
And can I just,
Yeah.
so, yeah, we have that at the college I work at, and I hate it, because they took the freedom of us to speak on our campus, and they limited it to a few, stadium steps in front of our auditorium where nobody is. So these free speech areas we're talking about are places where people have no access to the ears of other people. So what's the point of free speech? So it seems to me like that, I'm all for it, but I wouldn't narrow a free speech area down to a small little location that's off the beaten track where nobody's gonna know that you're protesting something. That seems to me defeating the whole purpose of protest.
Well, and that was, so my mind was going to a similar place.
I mean,
Is that, I don't know where we would
Maybe
put
create
that.
multiple ones or create a broader area, but make sure it's near a place where people
I mean, I think.
would have access to it and see it.
To me, if it was to be akin to what Santa Monica's done and to sort of fall into that, like where we would want people to go that would cause the least disruption in terms of if we weren't able to have a police
Right.
prep, or that, I mean, I would think that the lawn in front of the Hart Park House, sort of just east of the tennis courts would make the most sense, because
Yeah.
there's not a lot of planned events that happen there anyway. It wouldn't block the sidewalk, it wouldn't block traffic.
South of the Hart Park House?
Yeah, like sort of that.
No,
that-
but nobody's
but there's
goes
no
by
traffic
there.
Right. No, I mean, it doesn't satisfy your point that it's not as visible, but to me, it's still a place within a fairly well-trafficked area of the park that would then at least insulate it from some of the issues that we would have if people just using Kirsten Court all the time without having us have the ability to reroute Metro and, alert the police and block traffic and things like that. I mean, but I don't know that we need to do that necessarily.
To clarify, that's really the intention of setting an area like that is for time-sensitive
Right.
events. It wouldn't be the city suggesting that with notice, with working with us, that's where you're limited to. In fact, this is like option B if you somehow find out about it like day of and don't want to have to deal with trying to work with us, then boom, there's a spot for you.
I mean, the fact of the matter is we've had plenty of spontaneous rallies in a Kirsten Court, which is exactly where this event occurred, and it's been fine. I mean, I guess I just worry about that time that it's not, right? Like, if we had this situation occur, quickly, you could see a situation in which, there might, one nice thing about this event with this organization, a couple I've been to, is the organizers are very vigilant about telling them, the participants, don't block the sidewalks, let people through. Obviously, that's not gonna be the case, with every protest, and some protests is the point of it is to block the sidewalk and to be obstructionist. So I'm just trying to balance the two.
I see what you mean with the short notice, and I think that the north part of the park would probably be better where the fountain is and where the cannon is, because you're still on the main boulevard and you're still being seen by tons of traffic. So if we ever had to do that, it would be on short notice, day of, let's do the north part of the park on Sir Roger Boulevard, where there's the most traffic,
So like between the cannon and the hedge.
but where the beer garden was.
Yeah,
Right.
that's why they put the beer garden there.
No, they put the beer garden there because you can't put a bouncy house there.
So, how are people feeling about the designated area? I'm hearing some interest of it, but some.
When I hear
against
that free
it.
speech area, it just ticks me off for some reason.
Do we
Here's
have
your
to
free
be?
speech, there's where you can
I
be,
cannot
there's where you
imagine-
can be free over
I
here.
don't imagine your college
You know.
can require people to only do it there. but
Yes,
we
they
can
do,
talk- we can talk about
they
that
do,
separately.
they do, but I know you're a lawyer, and let's talk.
Yeah,
'Cause
I'm not that
I
kind of
don't
lawyer,
like
but
it.
maybe they need to be challenged.
And it doesn't have to be in this policy, it can be one of our
But UCLA has
policy,
it.
or one of our,
USC has it.
our office
all
procedures,
have it.
that if something happens, by the way, you can use this
Off the
section, or you
beaten
can use
path.
this park or this area. It doesn't have to be in this, correct?
In other cities, when they're providing an area like that, or at least in Santa Monica, it is provided in code,
Okay.
or there's code that references a almost manual type of a document, and that's where they put that information. So I didn't list it in my recommendations for option 2, in that we hadn't discussed where it could be, but if we were going to be amending code, I might suggest if there's interest in designating a spot that we at least make mention of it.
I'm okay with
I mean,
not.
I think,
yeah, I'm
I'm
saying-
also okay if, because we haven't seen actual, like, proposed code
No,
amendments,
this
have
was
we?
just to
Right.
give an overview of what it is that we're working with now and where I think we could go and why I think we should consider that, and then gauge from you guys what that could look like.
I mean,
So
I'm
what I'm-
okay with you proceeding, or, you know, your office, you and Alex proceeding to provide what you would recommend in the way of a code amendment to address option 2 and some of the discussion we've had, and decide as you're doing that whether it makes sense to have this as an option, either because it makes sense to have an alternative to the process that you're gonna recommend, or to provide the protection under the law to have an alternative like that, and just decide whether or not to make that recommendation. You know, when I do this, I tend to like, it makes sense once you're sort of in it versus talking about it like theoretically.
So I think the only change then to option 2 that's in the staff report would be consideration of a designated space for time-sensitive events. In terms of what I did suggest, how are you feeling about waiving indemnity and insurance and finding requirements and the timing carve-out for notice?
We can't really require indemnity insurance.
I would waive it, I would,
That's why we're waiving it, yeah.
Yeah,
why have it?
Okay.
People wanna speak, I mean,
yeah.
I get it, we're trying to recover costs if they should come up, but, I mean, part of the responsibility of government is to keep the streets running, you know.
And
Well,
I
and-
should
and
just
if
mention,
by-
storm,
there
it
have
causes
been
a problem, we
some
clean that
cases where they did allow an insurance requirement. It just is susceptible to that case law changing because there have been really strong dissenting opinions on those cases.
I would rather have the proponents come to us to talk about it so that we could have the police there I mean, to me, in between the cost of the insurance or the avoidance of insurance, if someone avoided insurance, or avoided the permit for the insurance purposes, and then we have an event and it causes damage that we don't know, because we didn't know about it, that's a bad outcome. Whereas if they come to tell us, well, we can be proactive and avoid the need for insurance because we've got, you know, police around the corner, or, you know, extra people with staff. Yeah, we've planned, yes, thank you. So, I mean, that's,
Agreed,
That makes sense.
yep.
okay.
Okay.
Do you have the guidance you need?
I do, thank you.
Great. All right. Then I think we'll move on to the next agenda item. Madam City Clerk, you've got a report for us on the Student Commissioner Program.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City Council met in December 2024 and provided direction to staff to return to a future council meeting, asking for the current policy, the city's current policy on youth and student commissioners. In between that direction and when staff actually brought the report to City Council, we had some major events that occurred in the city, and so that report was delayed until April of this year. Staff provided an update on what the policy was for student commissioners, and it was decided that staff should return to a future meeting to provide recommendations for incorporating youth commissioners or student commissioners into the existing commissions. So before you this evening is a staff report outlining some of the options that staff is presenting to the City Council. City staff in its research reached out to a number of local agencies to determine if they had similar programs that the city could utilize as a model for Sierra Madre. Staff reached out to the City of Arcadia. They did at one time have a youth commissioner program that has been since discontinued, but they are looking to perhaps bring it back in a modified version. One of their challenges that they expressed is that but they weren't able to have consistent youth and student commissioners on their commissions. The city of Monrovia does utilize youth commissioners on their community services commission. They are non-voting members, and the way that works is they are required to volunteer a certain number of hours at community events, as well as attending the community services commission meetings, and to provide feedback and advice to the commission. In Glendale, it's a little more formal in Glendale. About half of their commissions have 2 students that serve 1-year terms. They're non-voting members, but they're very active within the commissions. And then the commissioners, and this is one of the only agencies that I was able to find that has youth commissioners or student commissioners up to the age of 24. In the city of South Pasadena, they do have youth commissioners also, or student commissioners that serve from the ages of 14 to 18, and it's a 1-year term. And then additionally, the city of Sierra Madre has the YMCA down the street, and they have a youth in government program that models a lot of the California's legislature and programs in government to provide opportunities to high school students. The YMCA has expressed some interest in partnering with the city of Sierra Madre. Their biggest concern is that their programs really their youth in government program runs from August to March, and so they would only have students available during that time period. But otherwise, they are interested in exposing their youth to some sort of government programs. City staff is recommending that if the city council would like to move forward with a student program or a youth program, that the commissioners that are appointed by the commissions themselves to serve a 1-year term. And it is also asking that as part of that appointment that the student commissioner is active in participating in events such as Earth Day or concerts or other events, and that would foster a younger version for volunteers, and it would foster that program. City staff's also recommending, because it's been an issue in the past, an attendance record be kept for youth commissioners, and the city council can determine what the minimum requirement is. Staff is recommending no more than 25% of excused absences during that 12-month period, which would still be reasonable considering that almost all of the commissions except for Planning Commission meet monthly, but they cancel 1 or 2 meetings per year for holidays or summer recess. And so 25% of the meetings is not an unreasonable, but the city council could select a different number. Mr. Mayor, those are the recommendations of city council, and we are open to further discussion if you'd like.
Great. Questions from council?
Do our adult council, commissions have a requirement on attendance?
The attendance requirements are loosely based on, it really says the code says, or policy says excessive absences, but it's not a fixed number. And the city council can make determinations on what that number is. If the city council finds that there are excessive absences, then the city council can make a decision to remove a commissioner at that point.
Just curious.
The council or just the mayor? Because they serve at the mayor's pleasure, right?
It would be the mayor.
Okay. So let's I like where you're going with that. But let's stay with
definitely,
youth,
but I wanted to know
commissions.
I wanted to keep it consistent if there was one.
Oh, perfect. Yes. Other questions? All right. Do we need to open this up for public comment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. And there were no speaker cards submitted or emails.
And nobody in the audience, so we'll close public comment and bring it back for discussion. Thoughts?
I don't hear a clamoring for youth representation on these commissions. I don't know about you guys, but
Well, you guys did the survey of the commissions, right? Like, you asked the commissions if they wanted it, I thought. That was part of the April report, wasn't it?
Yes.
We heard back from 2 commissions that expressed interest, specifically the Community Services Commission said that they would be interested. but that was really the only, feedback.
I like the idea that Laura, or that City Clerk Aguilar mentioned of using this as a potential vehicle for fostering our next generation of volunteers, because we are facing quite an attrition problem. You know, if you look around at the organizations that plan our events, they aren't getting younger.
No.
So I do like the idea of seeing if this would work in a way that could then, you know, we could put, you know, youth commissioners on. I mean, a number of the commissions are involved in planning public activities, right? It's not just community services. National Resource Commission does the Earth Day, and, you know, obviously the Senior Commission does all sorts of events. And so it just seemed to me like that could be good. I don't know if there's a youth appetite for it, but.
So we have an event coming up this weekend that is a mayor's speech event that's been put on by a group in our local area, and we have kids. We have 20 students now from all the way from La Cañada to Montebello to Sierra Madre, Arcadia, all these regions for kids that want to be involved in government, and they're competing in a mayor's speech, and then we have a rubric on voting for those. And I do know that YMCA has their youth program. We have the teen library.
The Green Teams?
Green Teams, that would be a great resource for our resource committees. And PHS and all of our schools and MIR and all that have little governments too, and their ASBs, and so that's where most of those students then come. I've noticed these become more popular lately since it's been more and more competitive to getting into college, because no longer can you just get A's and B's and be an athlete. You have to really be involved in something where you're making a difference in a community. And so I've seen a huge increase in my perspective as a high school teacher of seeing students looking for things like this. It's almost like an internship, like you were saying.
I like the idea of leaving it to the commissions to decide if they want it, and if they do, who to pick. I mean, I don't think we need to like foist this upon them. I think we should highly encourage it and especially pitch it in the volunteerism realm. I like that idea, unless we think that without mandating it, it won't happen.
Well, I agree that I don't think we should mandate it, and I also like the structure we've got here. I think the criteria align with other cities in the region. I think they make sense. I think they make sense for Sierra Madre. I think, you know, the ages and the attendance and the voting and term limits, I think all of that makes perfect sense. So to me, I'd be willing to say, you know, I don't think we need to do much, but if we can have this as a guidance for the commissions to say, if you want youth members, here's the criteria, and leave it up to them from there. And I think that, you know.
Can I make some adjustments? I would say instead of 2 student commissioners per commission, I would say 1, because since we don't have 5 instead of 7 commissioners on each commission, having 2 out of 5 of those people be students, even though they're not voting, that's a lot, it seems like, to help to maintain 2. I would rather only have 1.
This would be, they would be above and beyond the 5 that are on it. It wouldn't be like you were replacing one of the 5 with a student.
No, I don't mean that. I'm
Okay.
saying that I think our commissions are small.
Right.
We don't have a large commission on
Right.
each department. And having 2 students that they have to help manage and help, you know, would be a lot. I would say 1 is very manageable. But having 2, I think, is from.
It's very practical.
Number 2, I think that the age range is great, the 13 to 21, especially because a lot of kids are staying local, going to community colleges now, and so this gives them the opportunity to do this versus like a whole 2 years to 4 years of being in something where then they want to go to college, like our transportation student. And then I think that once we proceed to that part, what I really like is when you see these applications and you have to require, you know, 2 letters of reference from either someone in the community and someone from their campuses. I like that kind of, I've seen that as successful.
So what I'm hearing is you would change from two youth to 1 and require 2 letters of recommendation.
As part of the application process.
I didn't read it as mandating 2, it says no more than 2, and I think if to the extent, to extend the theme of letting commission, like I could see community services wanting 10,
Right.
Because if they could leverage them to like work movie night and work, the 4th of July parade, like, the more the merrier, right? Like, so, I mean, I feel like if we're gonna give this to the commissions to decide how they want to manage this, and I could even see the Community Services Commission, not necessarily having them be commissioners, but have kind of a youth,
That would be different.
I mean, and,
think that
if
would
they
be
wanna
very
like
different.
modify this for that, I mean, I'm all for like people figuring out how best to like use our resources and generate resources, so I wouldn't necessarily limit it, but, cause if a commission thinks they can manage more than one, the problem is, I guess, we wanna make sure that it's the commission managing it and not staff.
Yeah, kind of like to know what the city clerk would say about that.
I think to some degree, especially with community services, it makes sense to have the city staff provide some guidance. But the mentoring could come from and should come from the commission itself, because they're the volunteers as well. The idea is, as you mentioned, of not more than 2 was with the thought of community services in mind, but also with the evolution of the changes in e-vehicles and the environment. There's been an interest in a greener and sustainable youth-based community, and so the intent is not to provide limitations, but if the commission feels that, and really just to empower the commission, if they feel that 1 is all they can manage,
Okay.
But 2, they can manage 2 if they want to mentor them and bring them along. The intent really was to give the commission the flexibility to decide what would be best for them. On some commissions, maybe the seniors wouldn't want to manage more than 1 or 2, but on community services, they probably would. And then, as you mentioned, the age group was now intended to incorporate, based on what Glendale does, they go all the way up to 24, but 21 seems to be the age where community colleges are really, that are transitioning to, and so that was why the 21 was selected.
So
any thoughts on the 2 letters?
I'm cool with that. I was just gonna say maybe, instead of us voting on it or rubber stamping, or maybe we could ask that after they've been appointed, they be brought to us and introduced, kind of formally.
I like that.
That would give them a sense that they're serving the city council,
Princesses.
tangentially.
Yeah, like the
Yeah.
princesses and ambassadors. Does this have to be like, do we have to actually, we don't have to amend code for this, right? Can we just have a policy or a manual guide? I would prefer not to get into like municipal code, especially if they're non-voting. It seems to me like we don't necessarily need to have to.
Yeah, this would be considered policy, and unless the city council desires to make it more formal, this would just be considered policy, and then the commissions would appoint youth or student commissioners as they seem fit and as they have a need.
I mean, I'd like the policy to say that if we're in agreement, that, we strongly encourage this, or we strongly I would like there to be, not like obviously a mandate, but, kind of a, indication to the commissions that we think this is a good idea, and while we're not gonna foist it upon them, we really would like them to, and as liaisons, we should probably take back to our respective commissions, this message of like, hey, this is what we're doing, and, hype it up as like, look at this great tool that we're providing you.
Well, and that made me think kind of, how we communicate it for, more broadly, like having something that would communicate it, that would be a fact sheet or an interest sheet or a flyer that could go to the schools, all the schools that meet the 13 to 21, plus our service units, our Girl Scout and Boy Scout troops. I think that would make sense.
Boys and Girls Club, YMCA.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, any of those, right? So that here's an opportunity if you want to serve. To your point, people wanting to differentiate themselves.
Softball team
If we
players.
just create it and don't communicate it or don't advertise it, it may never get used. But if we create it, I think we should do have something to advertise it.
I just thought of something too. I just learned, I just learned this, but it's been brought up time and time again that kids won't try to do something unless they see someone else like them doing that. So if we portray, diversity, gendered equality, these different things and these lines of government that we all do, kids won't even try to attempt to do something like this youth service unless they see someone like them holding a position like this. So I think it's really great for us to introduce this to our city, to our students in Pasadena Unified, showing that you now have this opportunity. We're just like you. We have such a diverse city, and this really shows like all our different departments, all our different assets, everything that we try to include everybody so that they can also see themselves, and it gives an opportunity to those who would never normally be able to do this.
Sounds good.
Could I just ask two clarifying points? In the policy that we're going to create for this, I want to clarify that they are non-voting members, and the only compensation would be for school credits, volunteer
Correct.
hours. And then I wanted to find out what the council's position is on residency.
Residency or school.
Well, the problem is we don't have any schools in town that go above middle school. So so it's really, frankly, this age group, there's no schools in our town that actually have, I mean, maybe on the low end, there's some kids that are 13 at middle school, but after that,
Should we say PUSD, Pasadena Unified School Districts, or?
We do have some schools in Arcadia, some residents that they might find it more convenient to serve because they're border boundary. They might find it more convenient to serve here than in Arcadia.
What's the wording that we use for the adults?
There are no residency requirements for adults.
I think we stay consistent.
Yeah.
I mean, look, what I tell
Well-
people when they ask if there's a residency requirement for commissions, I say there is no residency requirement. But to be frank, it is a factor that has been, that people consider when making appointments.
We have no non-residents on our commission.
It has been a consideration, but the previous councils have had the attitude, for lack of a better word, that they don't want to discourage volunteerism, and so to the extent that someone outside, they could have a business in town and they want to volunteer, or if they have other interests in town, they don't want to discourage anyone from wanting to volunteer.
And we do have a lot of people that are very active, like on the library board, the library, Friends of the Library, and other groups that are so active, but they live in Pasadena, Arcadia.
Well, and I mean, we're in this group, and maybe not Gina to the extent, but like we've enjoyed a particularly robust volunteerism period. Like we've had multiple applicants for commissions pretty much my entire service on this, which I understand is not typical. So I mean, we don't want to put restrictions on things, because for a long time we were, really like asking for as many people as possible, widening the net as much as possible. So yeah, I mean, I think it's fine. Again, to the point of like, we should let commissions manage this, and if, community service thinks it's important to emphasize residency, then they'll pick, of the group that they get, they'll pick people that are residents. I mean, it's
Self-regulated.
Fair enough. I'm good with that.
and then did you want feedback on the attendance, whether the proposal?
Yeah, it's currently recommended at 25%, but it could be any amount or no amount.
I think if we're gonna give credit, there has to be an attendance
Yeah.
requirement.
Yep.
Okay.
And I actually look, it's hard to know because we don't know how popular this is or isn't going to be, and I don't wanna discourage participation and discourage people from applying. I did like the idea of requiring, sort of a volunteer minimum outside of the meetings. But, maybe we sort of make that as a secondary point if it picks up steam and we get traction, and then we create some requirements around that, because I don't know right now if it's gonna be popular.
The attendance requirements are in line with what Monrovia is doing in order to provide volunteer hours or volunteer credits to their student commissioners.
Great. Any other discussion? Madam City Clerk, have you got what you need?
I just want to make sure that I understood. We are doing a certain amount of excused or
Yes.
no limit.
25%, I think, is what.
Yep.
Or you could do what their district does, it's 20%. You can't miss more than 20% of your school before you're what's called SARBed. So it'd be consistent with what they already know.
I highly doubt that most students know what the minimum.
Oh, yes, they do.
My kids never did.
Well, private schools, but as soon as it shows up, like when you look at your grades and your, what they call the Q or your records, it's red, how much school you've missed. 5%, 10%, 30%,
Oh.
0%.
I
Because remember,
think
public
it's-
schools only get paid for your attendance.
Right, no, I know, my kids went to public school for most of their career, but,
I think 25 is easier to calculate.
Okay.
I mean, it's
25.
Okay,
okay.
thank you. Staff has sufficient direction.
Great. All right, on to our last agenda item. So we're going to bring back the contract with the county for,
Oh, I forgot that was the.
yes.
Sorry, that's all me, but
All right.
Oh.
So we've had some discussion on it. So if we bring this back, let me just suggest we start with questions and then we go discussion. So are there any more questions about the contract?
I don't know if anyone would know this, because I don't know if anyone's still here, but with the things that have happened in the park, like people getting injured, had a suicide in the park, we've had 2 attempted suicides in the park, we've had homeless living in the park, would that open us up to more liability now that we have to have the extra insurance? Is that, do you see where I'm going with that? Does that hold us to a higher standard now?
Mayor Pro Tem, with respect to insurance, if the agreement is approved, the insurance will change. That's the premium side. But on the liability side, if an injury does occur on areas of improvements that the city has made, for example, the parking area, the restroom, any injuries that occur there, trips and falls, things like that, the city will be liable for those claims if a claim is submitted by the injured individual.
And if that had happened yesterday, what would happen? Like without this agreement, like if someone had tripped and fell in the parking lot yesterday,
Sure.
would we probably cover that, I suspect?
That's a good question. The city, if the injured person would normally submit a claim to the city would review the incident and where it occurred, and then questions would come up is this area city property? If it is determined that it is not, then the claim will be denied, but also tendered to the agency that is responsible for that area.
So at
Right,
this-
so my question would be like, if today I went up there, well, not right now because it's closed, but like, say it's not
No,
closed.
even when it's closed, it says that we're liable.
Right,
for
well,
it.
even better, it is closed now. If I climbed the fence and fell in, like, today, would we tender that to the county? Have we historically tendered that stuff to the county?
Luckily, we haven't had any incidents, but if that were the case, then yes, we wouldn't necessarily tender it to the county because there's no agreement at this point. The claimant would receive a denial letter, and once received, then they would seek or file a claim against LA County or with LA County.
But post this, they would file it on us because we are now gonna be,
Once it's determined, if the agreement is signed, if an incident occurs and it's determined that the incident occurred on city, what the city is responsible for, then yes, the city will be responsible for the
so we
the
expanded
occurrence.
our liability.
So I had a question. So what happens if we don't approve this contract?
Mayor, that's a good question. It would continue as what we're doing now. As Senior Analyst Carlson mentioned, that if the county decides that it does not want to use that as a park or can not be used as a park, then that would happen.
They could pave it over.
Yes, it could not be used as a park moving forward.
And what's the potential impact of the road widening of Carter with this contract?
Mayor, Carlson, would you
I think it's
respond to that?
As far as this agreement goes, if I understand correctly, The widening of Carter was in the settlement agreement with the project, so that's already done, basically.
Right, so that's codified,
And
okay.
it's it might be 5 feet extension to the north, primarily for sidewalk and improvements.
What about the argument between the city and the county about who needs to repair the road? Because of, well,
Right.
in part because of the increased activity. I assume if we went back to them and said we are not entering into this agreement, that conversation opens back up?
No, I don't imagine it would. That was a component of the agreement that they proposed that we thought was unreasonable, so I don't think we would take over the road. I think it would be status quo the way it is now. They would continue to maintain the road.
And they're gonna pave the road.
Right, if you look at section 2.6, and like I mentioned, this was the most contentious part, we finally got to language that they specifically are in charge of asphalt, paving, that kind of stuff. We told them that incidental trash and brush clearing from the sides of the road, we would take on.
So, that's paving the road that's inside the park. They're gonna pay, so who's paving Carter as a part of the Carter widening?
The developer.
Developers
A
doing.
developer's contractor.
Okay, so the developer's contractor's coming in, they're gonna pave it. Is there any cost savings for us as long as the equipment is all there? And like, I mean, would we be able to, we probably need to go out for bid, but if we timed it around the time that they're doing that, is there any potential cost savings of doing the parking lot at that time?
I believe that would be quite difficult because then you have a contractor making a agreement with two different entities. I mean, I know we're trying to do it at the same time. I think it's gonna be very difficult to do at the same time. A lot of it depends on how much debris maintenance may happen next year as a result of fire debris flows.
All right,
So they won't be fixing that road until they're relatively confident that they're done with the maintenance of the Bailey Canyon debris basin.
Okay. Could anything with the Eaton Canyon Park be compensated out of the fire funds?
Eaton Canyon?
I'm
I'm sorry,
sorry.
the Bailey Canyon, sorry.
That's all right.
Thank you for correcting.
Could you restate that? I got a little bit lost too.
So could any of the improvements to Bailey Canyon Park be funded out of the lawsuit with Edison?
I'm hesitant to talk about the lawsuit, Mayor.
Okay.
I can
Fair
tell
enough.
you that we are not,
It's not part of the agenda.
we are not claiming with FEMA because the incident happened while it was under control of the county.
Okay.
There's the miscellaneous terms and conditions that users shall identify, defend, and hold district and the county of Los Angeles respectful, basically harmless against liability, damages, cost, expenses, including bodily harm, death of or personal injury, or any person or property. Now, that of course would only be on the section that you said. And I go back to Mount Wilson Trail, and if we go to Bailey Trail, so the trails would be LA County unless they become into national forest a mile up. But this section would all be ours.
Well, the trails are ours.
The trails are,
The trails have always been ours.
But not, so this
Exhibit,
case.
yeah, Exhibit A shows the
Yeah.
boundary of what the agreement covers.
But the boundary here is, those are not the trails. I mean, I guess it's that little part that goes up to the, where the debris basin is, but the actual trail of Bailey Canyon is Sierra Madre and not governed by this agreement.
And I also believe that the liability as stated in the agreement applies to our improvements. And where we would make an improvement is where we would be, unless I
Nope,
misunderstood.
it says, use or removal of improvements or user's breach of any term. It's a language, but it doesn't just cover just the improvement area, it covers the whole section that we're now taking on as liable. It's the whole section of the map,
It is a mutual indemnification.
yeah.
Okay.
Are there other questions? All right, since we've made this agenda item, we open up for public comment. Are there any public comment that we have on this item?
Not on this item, Mr. Mayor.
close the public comment, bring back for discussion. Where are people, I've got some feeling of where at least one person stands on this. Thoughts on the others?
I'm inclined to approve it, just.
Okay. I'm in the same boat. I really appreciate Mayor Pro Tem's bringing it up, and I really appreciate the thoughts on cost on it. I think it's taken 7 months of negotiations on this. This is an area that has been very contentious. It's a park that, you know, SMEAC has it's been very important to those folks. I would hate to put that at risk by not approving this, and the county say, well,
But the
we
county
can-
didn't even ask for this. We went to the county with this. They didn't ask to change anything. We came to them and said, hey, that's my curiosity. Why we come to them and say, hey, let's bring on more liability and cost for us? We
Well-
brought this to the county for an agreement. They didn't come to us.
I understand that, but we're here now, right? The horse has
I
left
guess
that
I look
barn.
at this liability and it really bothers me that you guys are like, not you guys, but all of us are willing to cut these costs for our library. We're willing to cut down to like 3 days a week on our library, a brand new, beautiful
We have
library.
not talked about the library. We
I'm
have not
just
talked about the
saying,
library right now.
we're talking about cutting costs all across the city in the future.
We have not talked about any cutting costs. We cannot talk about that right now.
Okay, we're looking at a deficit in a
That is
budget,
true.
and we
Yes.
will have to make
But
cuts.
this is not going to create,
Like-
this is not going to change the deficit.
Well, it's gonna incur more costs.
We don't have to pave the parking lot. We're
Yes,
not
we do.
required.
It says within 5 years, we have to make improvements to the parking lot and the bathroom. Within 5 years. That's
Okay.
not even on our budget. We didn't even budget that out yet in our capital
Actually, James
improvement.
mentioned that we would use, for the parking lot, we would use the.
Hopefully
Measure
use
A
grants.
funds.
No, it says in here that there are grants funds available if we get them.
No, we get Measure A funds to do paving. That's exactly what.
And so we're gonna take it away from our other
Well, that's just,
roads?
you'd be using it there instead of somewhere else.
Yeah, so we'll be taking away from our potholes that we were already getting complaints about and our other
I have no
infrastructure.
problem with the city paying $50,000 to repave that parking lot that hasn't been repaved in 20 years.
And
Our
increase-
city
increase
residents
cost
use that-
insurance.
Use that
Details,
park
details.
all the time. I mean, I can't imagine standing up and telling our residents that we have put Bailey Park at risk when we are at risk of losing the trail. Like, I just can't even imagine, and it's not just SMEAC, I mean, we have plenty of residents who feel very strongly about that park. And I think the county actually would pave it over in any?
Nope.
Of course not.
They don't
But,
do that.
but if someone said to me, could they, and would you have any way to stop it? And I would say they could, and we would have no way of stopping it. I mean, I do not wanna be in the position of giving away public space, essentially, public park space.
I think we've got the general opinions on this.
I
don't
actually
know-
haven't seen a single county park anywhere in Arcadia, in Pasadena, even in Altadena, that is covered over any of their hiking trail lots or areas or parks. Not a single one. They're all run by Arcadia. Look at Arcadia's county park. It is maintained very well. They also do the policing with sheriffs. And they take on every part of the liability. And it's not in LA County area, it's in Arcadia City.
So, I mean, I think it may be worth, as Analyst Carlson was saying, Management Analyst Carlson was saying that this was something that was negotiated over 7 months. How involved were you with the negotiations?
I basically took the staff lead with the city attorney.
Okay.
So it was the two of us that really wordsmithed a lot of this stuff with them, and also basically just because of my institutional knowledge of the place, I think I was helpful in that fact.
So you were involved in most of the meetings and communications?
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask why it came up?
The Meadows needed to know who to go to for the widening. And at that time, we discovered that we didn't have an agreement. We had already known that it's flood control property. We reached out to the county. They searched for a couple months. They didn't have the agreement either. At that point, we said, let's go ahead and have an agreement. Let's formalize what we're doing.
I think I mean, I don't know the history of the parks in the other towns, but my guess, if I had to guess, is that the difference is those are county parks that happen to be located in the city. This was county property that we've turned into a park. You know, it's not, the county did not turn this into a park for purposes of parkland. We said, we have this property that you're not using, county, can we make it into a park because our residents want parkland? That to me is a distinction. Like, I don't think Arcadia was like, let's build a pool and, you know, a baseball field and everything. They have a county park in Arcadia, and that's why the county primarily runs that. That's not what the situation here is, from my understanding, in terms of the genesis of this. But
And this is the only flood control district or flood control area that has a park in it. I mean, I think that's what I heard Analyst Carlson say, was that other flood control areas don't have a park in it. So that we're an exception in it.
Well, look, I feel like the budgetary concerns are very legitimate. But we can't really look at that right now in terms of how much we're gonna save and where would we spend that money in a budget, in next year's budget. It's an imponderable right now. It's a good theoretical argument, but it's an imponderable.
And
So
we can postpone it
I'll
5 years.
support this based on the idea that I don't like the risk involved of losing the capacity to have this park. I'm not saying it's a high risk, but I think if we tell them, okay, no dice on this contract, I don't know what that's gonna engender in them in terms of their attitude towards us on these kinds of, on all the ways we have to cooperate with them. I think we have to think about that a little bit. I'm not real crazy about this, to tell you the truth, because I think your issues are legitimate. But I have a lot of confidence in Mr. Carlson and our city attorney. I think they probably got as good a deal as we could get. So I'm gonna support it.
I guess the way I'm thinking about it too is, to me, it sort of codifies what has already been happening, because I suspect, you know, given the incidents that you mentioned, that if there was an actual lawsuit over those things, there would have been a conversation with the county, and it's unlikely, I think, that the county would have covered, you know, some serious liability. There would have been some sharing. So to me, this is sort of just putting on paper what probably has already been the practice and would likely be the outcome of these things. It's true, I guess, that we may incur more in insurance, but I'm also glad that we would have coverage if there was a problem. I mean, I guess that sort of goes hand in hand.
Was there a lawsuit with the death of the father and the son with the flash flood? I believe there was.
We'll probably sue the county.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Just curious.
That's
So-
their baby.
All right.
So I think we've got a direction on this. I'm gonna try to wrap us up this evening, and I'll entertain a motion.
Do we move on it?
I move to approve the use agreement.
Okay, I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. That takes us then to future agenda items. Does anybody have any future agenda items?
I have one.
Yes.
Could we ask, and they don't need to make a special trip, because I think they come periodically, but could we ask the Clean Power Alliance the next time they are scheduled to report what they expect the effect of the new federal budget to be on the clean power and energy costs generally? Because we've seen a lot of reporting about how there's concern about the federal budget that just passed having pretty drastic effect on cost of energy.
Yeah.
Could we get a report back from them? I mean, I say that is the board meet, the Clean Power Alliance.
Oh.
Because I imagine, I haven't read it yet, but there's, the board meeting's on Thursday.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I mean, I don't need somebody to come out here for a special trip, but I just was hoping that if they've been thinking about, I'm sure
Like-
they've been,
like to know what's-
they've
Oh,
been
yes.
probably tracking it as it was going, and they probably have a sense of what it all means, and it would be good for us to hear that, I think.
Sounds good?
Mhm.
Okay. Other agenda items? Then I will move to adjourn, or I will entertain a motion.
You can move.
I guess I can, okay, I'll move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned until August 26th.
August 26th.
All right. Happy summer, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.